All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Menlo Park City Council meeting for January 16th, 2018. I will now call the meeting to order. I'm Peter Otake. It's my honor to serve as mayor this year. And allow me to introduce my fellow council members. Councilmember Rich Klein to my right, your left. Councilmember Kirsten Keith next to me to my right. Vice Mayor Ray Mueller to my left, and Councilmember Catherine Carlton to my far left. Over at the senior staff table, we have City Manager Alex McIntyre and City Attorney Bill McClure. Good evening to you both. And our Deputy City Clerk, Jelena Harada, over on this side. I'd like to invite, if you would like to make a public comment this evening, if you could kindly fill out the forms at the back and give the cards to Jelena. Please put on what item you'd like to comment on, and she will get that set up in order. If I can ask you all to rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. I think we will be starting with public comment, first. Under public comment, the public may address the City Council on any subject not listed on the agenda. Each speaker may address the City Council once under public comment for a limit of 3 minutes. Please clearly state your name and address or political jurisdiction in which you live. The City Council cannot act on items not listed on the agenda, and therefore the City Council cannot respond to non-agenda issues brought up under public comment other than to provide general information. But I will also invite, if you have comments on some of the informational items, which tend to be later tonight, you are welcome to submit those comment cards now if you would like to be part of public comment and not wait till later to give your comments. So with that, the cards that I have right now, we'll start with Maria Amundsen, followed by Marcy Abramowitz. Maria, welcome this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Maria Amundsen. I'm a 26-year resident of Menlo Park, and I'm on the board of the Felton Gables Homeowners Association. I have 2 comments for the council relevant to your ongoing deliberations on train grade crossings in the city. First and foremost, the position of Felton Gables Homeowners Association is that a residential neighborhood is no place for elevated train tracks. Further to this point, for both safety and quality of life, we are asking the council to pursue quad gates and a quiet zone status at the Encinal grade crossing, just as Atherton has done at the Fair Oaks crossing. My second comment is to update you on our neighborhood letter writing campaign in support of this position. To date, we have collected more than 250 letters from resident voters in Felton Gables, the Stone Pine neighborhood, and on other Menlo Park streets. We intend to submit these letters to the council when this issue is next on your agenda. Thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Maria. Marcy, welcome, and Andrew Boone, you'll be next up.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Marcy Abramowitz, and I'm also here representing the Felton Gables Homeowners Association.
Hey, Marcy, can you move the mic a little bit closer? Thank you.
Sure. Should I start again? Good evening. I'm Marcy Abramowitz, and I'm also here representing the Felton Gables Homeowners Association and our neighborhood of 127 homes. Later this evening, staff will share Atherton's position opposing grade separation at Encinal and other crossings in their town. As representatives of the Felton Gables Homeowners Association have shared previously, we too oppose grade separating Encinal, believing it is unnecessary given the light traffic on the street and the severe negative impacts it would have on our neighborhood and the entire area. Our position is that the proper course of action at Encinal and any crossing not being grade separated would be quad gates and quiet zone status. We understand the city's goal list for the coming year will be determined over the coming weeks. and we respectfully request that the city add exploration and pursuit of quad gates and grade separation at Encinal and any other appropriate crossing to its priority list. We understand the cost of quad gates is in the neighborhood of $1 million, and quiet zone status can be achieved in as little as 3 months after quad gates are installed. Addressing one or more of the city's crossings in such a cost and time-efficient manner would be in everyone's best interest. Thank you for your consideration and time.
Thank you, Marcy. Andrew Boone, followed by Pamela Jones.
Good evening. My name is Andrew Boone. I live on Woodland Avenue in East Palo Alto and a former member of that city's transportation and planning commissions. And I I urge you to make it a priority this year to consider and approve Menlo Park's own minimum wage ordinance. The city has no minimum wage ordinance of its own, like most cities in the country, but many of our neighboring cities have concluded through careful study that the state's minimum wage is just too low for this region. The minimum wage is already $15 per hour in Mountain View and Sunnyvale, and it's higher than that in San Francisco, and it will be $15 per hour also in Emeryville. It's already $13 per hour in most of Santa Clara County and in the city of San Mateo. So this is something that leaders all over the region have realized is important to provide barely that bare minimum to get by. Anywhere within commuting distance of Menlo Park is $11 per hour is just not sufficient. And it's your moral responsibility to provide for those people who have the least in our community, and raising the minimum wage to $15 per hour, like many of our neighboring cities are doing, is a very reasonable step. Another thing I wish you would consider, and more cities are considering it, is some type of rent control, like the city I live in, East Palo Alto, has, and I live in a rent-controlled unit. And I know from experience that this isn't something that people are taking advantage of. People still, even in rent-controlled buildings, there's turnover, and the apartment owner has plenty of income to maintain the building. That's my experience in East Palo Alto and in my whole neighborhood. This doesn't lead to slumlords. It doesn't discourage new development. And it's a really reasonable policy that I think all the cities in this area need to consider, given the deepness of the housing crisis we're in now. We've had a lot of success with it in East Palo Alto, and it really benefits people who live in the same residence for a long time. That's only a small segment of the community, and it's mostly seniors who it helps prevent from being displaced. We have the same situation in Menlo Park and all over the region. Mountain View just started their own rent control program, and I believe you'll hear success stories from that community as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Pamela Jones, followed by Osnat Lowenthal.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members and staff. I just wanted to give you another thank you for the dedication of the Carl Clark Park in Bellhaven yesterday. It was a momentous event, and it could not have been done without all of the support and the work that you did to make sure that it was really a dynamic event. So thank you again.
Thank you, Pamela, and thanks to all the residents who came out for that. I know it was a very good event, so thank you. Osnat Lowenthal. Welcome.
Hello. My name is Osnat Lowenthal, and I'm a resident in Menlo Park. I live in 46 Willow Road, and I'm a parent of a current child at MCC, at the Menlo Children's Center, and I have 2 older kids that have graduated the program. They were there from 18 months until 5th grade. And I know the official stance is that it's premature to talk about it. I know that no decisions have been made yet. I want to make sure that my voice is heard, and not only me, but a lot of parents that are very concerned. So when you do come to vote about it, and you are talking about the expansion of the library, and we did see the blueprints of where the proposed site is supposed to be, and it's taken right over where MCC is. And nobody has told us what's going to happen if and when it will be built on. We want to make sure that our voices are heard. Now, there was one meeting already in December 4th that nobody knew, nobody told us. And there were discussions already on where the proposed library is supposed to be and what function it will be, and maybe affordable houses. Nobody mentioned childcare because there were no parents there because we didn't know about it. There's another meeting tomorrow. I hope more parents are going to make it because I just told them that there's a meeting. Let's see. So, and the truth is, if you are going to accept it, it's going to move extremely fast because this is one of the contingencies that were made on it. So we want to make sure that you know where we stand and how dependent we are, as I'm sure you're all aware because you all have kids, how dependent we are on this childcare facility. And I was here 8 years ago. In 2009, I came here, and some of you were at that council at that time. And I spoke about childcare need in Menlo Park. And the situation has only gotten worse through the years. There was a published report last year, by chance. Every 8 years, it seems they do a report. And the numbers have gone up. I sent you all, you have the report, you can look at the numbers. But childcare, affordable childcare, I should say, in Menlo Park is a real need. And there is a big lack of it. And if you're thinking even to build more affordable housing, you have to think about the infrastructure that will support it. It's not only the school districts, but it's also younger kids. Infants don't have a space in Menlo Park, and you need to consider this, as well as traffic, as well as the other infrastructure that will support all this growing population, mostly young families, who will enjoy the new affordable place. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, yes, that's right. Thank you. And in fact, on that topic, the siting meeting and workshop is for the main libraries tomorrow night at the main library at 6:30. So certainly want to encourage everyone to attend that meeting. All right. I'm just checking on one thing. Regarding possible comment on item I1. Okay, yes. Mr. Lauder, I know you would like to speak on item I1. I invite you, since you're here, to come up and speak now, rather than having to wait till when we get to I1. So.
Thank you. I have donated time from two other people. I've heard Jeff said that you would do it. So I don't know. Anyway.
Yes, we have 9 minutes.
So I've offers for donations from multiple parties. So is there a clicker?
Gary, the other person spoke in public comment. We generally don't allow them to donate their time, so if you could find somebody else to donate time to you, and then that will.
Respectfully, I think actually they were, because we're moving the comment from I1,
because
they
we're
would be
moving
able to
I1
speak
up.
again
Okay.
at I1,
It's
so
in
they would
effect.
be able to.
Okay, go ahead. And then we will have, and then while you're preparing for that, there were two other cards we received on that item from Andrew Young and Noel Young, and if you'd like to speak now, you can, or if you'd prefer to speak later when we get to I1. But we wanted to at least provide the opportunity if you didn't want to stay for.
They donated their time to me.
Oh, they did. Okay, so this is donated time to you. Okay, go ahead.
Can I use this? Oh, great. If I could just use this and the and this is perfect. Thank you.
I'll try to go quickly since there's a lot to cover in a short amount of time. Anyway, I really appreciate your making the time. And what happened to the slides? Well, it's on that one anyway. Okay, so firstly, I'm a venture capitalist, not a traffic engineer, but I've had a lifelong fascination with traffic congestion, and why governments often fail to rectify it. So this isn't even my main hobby, and I work out of my home, so this barely affects me. But I used to commute via 101 to Mountain View, so I have a lot of experience with this, and I'm seeking other people to take up the cause. But I can't stand to see people's lives wasted when it's avoidable, and I believe that this is. So the traffic woes, my hypothesis is that these traffic woes that we're having in the Bay Area are a function of human design errors. It's not just lack of money for building infrastructure. If spending $70 million makes traffic and safety both worse than it would have been without such spending, and if this is common and not rare, then no amount of money will save us. Fixing the bad thinking is the only solution. My goal is not only to mitigate this fiasco, but to prevent the ongoing tragedy nationwide. It's not just here in the Bay Area. So around 2002, Menlo Park and Caltrans replaced the Marsh Road interchange. That's the main interchange that I use, and it converted from a cloverleaf to a partial cloverleaf called abbreviated Parklow, and that conversion is similar to Willow. It made things much worse. I was baffled as to why, but it was a fait accompli, so I didn't look into it. 13 years later, in 2015, in Mr. Roadshow article, I read about the plan for the Willow Road one, and then I started to look into it, and the reasons I got for it were baffling and nonsensical. And it was already clear that the experts, i.e. our government, had failed us. And so my hypothesis was that it was a mistake, but I sought valid reasons. Even after a 5-hour meeting at Caltrans, the rationale still remained flawed, and I couldn't really make progress. So the premises were flawed. This is the screenshot from the presentation that was given last December. The project need is about short merges and insufficient vehicle storage and bike and pedestrians. From East Palo Alto's website, it's similar deficiencies impacting motorists, bicyclists, and pedestrians by eliminating traffic weeds and providing adequate space for vehicles to stack on freeway off-ramps. And you may ask what this really means. So the short weaving segments, that's the entering traffic from the entrance loop, crosses over with the exiting traffic to the exit loop. It's scary. Some accidents result. And in some interchanges, the congestion to an exit loop can cause the entering traffic to be delayed by crossing the queue. This does not appear to be the problem here at Willow, but it is the main premise. And there's a question as to whether it causes a congestion on 101. If so, it can be mitigated by adding an auxiliary lane. The reduced throughput of a partial cloverleaf won't improve that. If you have a look at typical traffic as shown by Google Maps, you can see the traffic is not underneath the interchange on the highway. This is in the PM rush hour. The traffic is all as a result of the exit being congested. As Yogi Berra said, you can observe a lot by just watching. The delay is not from short weaving segments. So this partial cloverleaf is similar to Hillsdale exit. The northbound 101 traffic headed for the San Mateo Bridge there takes the Hillsdale Boulevard as a shortcut. The two-lane queue spills way back onto 101, and the westbound traffic must wait in the eastbound queue. So that conversion was in 2002. I suggested repainting the road to a solid line in my meeting with them that happened more than a year ago. And they said, we don't have a process for that, so the problem persists. Just as gridlock has a shorthand name, my name for this is I call it hogging, and both hogging and gridlock are a problem at Marsh, and you can expect that they'll also be a problem at Willow once the change is made. Both cause enormous frustration and stress, and elevated cortisol levels are unhealthy for people. And cloverleafs are immune to both. Here's this is an aerial view of the Hillsdale 101, which shows the issue, but for the benefit of those who can't see that as clearly, this is a close-up showing the left turn, the westbound lanes approaching the traffic light empty. the eastbound full, and those, but further up, the traffic that would like to go into the westbound lane can't get to it because it's all congested by people heading east. The same problem exists at Marsh. The same problem is likely to exist at Willow unless this is somehow addressed. I posted a video on YouTube of this. So, bicycle safety, as George Centineo said, those who cannot remember the past and condemned to repeat it. Hillsdale Boulevard was converted, and I said, as in 2002. They're currently planning to put in a bike pedestrian bridge. Why? Because it's not so safe after all. This is from an article in 2014. Someone is hit by a car while walking or biking across the interchange at least once every 4 months, according to the collision data summarized in the report. 68-year-old Palo Alto resident Theodore Hintz was struck and killed by the driver of a Caltrans vehicle in December 2009 while he was bicycling on Hillsdale. So it's not as safe as you may have been told. And also from that article, the key thing is that this should have been done 12 years ago, exclaimed resident Jim Whittemore at last week's community meeting, referring to the interchange partial cloverleaf reconstruction in 2002. Safety, pedestrians, and cyclists got a lot worse, and it still hasn't been fixed. So they don't seem to be the solution that they're claimed to be. So 22 months ago, I sent you all a memo in which I cited reduced parkload throughput. And last year, Caltrans made a presentation, and Sean Nazari attempted to rebut my claim of reduced safety by cherry-picking the data from Tully Road, where they did a conversion. And his data, interestingly, showed how many miles driven before and after. The throughput of that from after converting it to a partial cloverleaf was reduced almost in half by 46%. Here's his slide from that presentation. Zoomed in on the right, you can see the first arrow points to 87.5 million vehicle miles driven in the 3-year period, and then down below, 41.8 million vehicle miles driven in the 32-month period after the construction. So dramatically reduced throughput. What about safety? Last month, Peter Otake opined that short merge is not safe, in my opinion. And there's a counterintuitive conclusion from this wonderful book named Traffic, which is that what makes us scared makes us stay safe, and vice versa. So I don't doubt that some accidents occur there. The question is just, in the aggregate, how many, comparing cloverleafs and partial cloverleafs. And this was not the first conversion of a cloverleaf to a partial cloverleaf. Surely there must be studies that compare safety, but I've not been able to find more than one, nor has Caltrans. And so everyone cites this 1999 study by the Virginia Transportation Research Council, in which it said a smaller percentage of angle accidents, i.e. T-bones, occur at full cloverleaf, 2%, than at partial cloverleaf, which is 24%, probably due to the absence of turning movements at the full cloverleafs. T-bones and head-on collisions are much more dangerous than side swipes, but I could not find any safety studies that counted the number of injuries to total accidents. I filed a CPRA request to Caltrans. No response after many requests until pressured from the governor's office and a state senator friend of mine, and the response they gave was not really useful, but I did find some useful data in the tour that they provided, the traffic operations analyst report on this interchange. And buried on page 131 is this data, which I'm going to whiz through because this, I assume, will be a public record. Point is that it's a lot worse. Sorry, to be clear, what that was a comparison of is Willow Road is a lot safer than Marsh Road. Marsh Road is a partial cloverleaf. Willow here was not, was still a cloverleaf. So, a commonly asked question, why challenge this so late? Well, actually, this has been challenged since 2013, but nobody's reacting to the bogus non-answers that were given. So, my challenging it started in 2015. Same story, I got bogus non-answers. And I was not the first to question this. During the public comment period in 2013, there was an insightful comment posted. Is that the... thanks.
Please turn in your card, and that would be great. Thank you. During the public comment period in 2013, there was an insightful comment made, which is on page 112 of the EIR, and it's hard to read this, so
Nancy Edelson, who's a member of the East Palo Alto Public Works and Transportation Commission, said, "This project is a mistake. For the most part, the present overpass configuration works as is. People and cars cooperate and weave smoothly. The cyclist and pedestrian problem can be solved by a separate overpass." And their Caltrans's non-responsive response was, "Please refer to the purpose and needs sections of Chapter 1, as well as discussion of future traffic conditions with and without the project in the traffic and transportation section of Chapter 2. Let me summarize by saying blah, blah, blah. They really did not address this whatsoever, and they did not address the suggestion that they leave it as is and just make a bike pedestrian bridge. And this is the standard for all of my interactions with Caltrans and Menlo Park's transportation people. So it raises the question, do they not understand the questions, or maybe they just don't have answers? If so, it's likely that the questioner's questions were the right ones and still need to be answered. The absence of good answers mean that the best course of action would be to refer it to a cloverleaf, or at least it needs to be properly analyzed as soon as possible. So what would help? Reversion to a cloverleaf is one. It's emotionally difficult to accept that it was all for naught, but another possibility is just to add back an exit loop for northbound 101 so the Menlo Park residents can return home faster, or another would be to create 2 exit lanes on 101 north for eastbound and segregate the exit lane for the westbound. So what would solve? Yep. Right. Oh, sure. By the way, shouldn't pretend to have all the answers. I mainly have the questions, and these are hypothetical answers, but there may be better ones. So what would solve the problem overall? Look at the region and focus on the bottlenecks. So address them in the correct order. So for the PM rush hour, the Bayfront Expressway at 84 University Avenue, and then the Bayfront Expressway at 84 Willow Road. If you look at this is typical traffic for a Wednesday at 5:40 p.m., and you can see that the traffic after the University Avenue intersection is orange. Before it is red, and then if you look at the Willow Road one, after it is red and before it is dark red or maroon. So clearly those two intersections are, if they were to be decongested, would enable vehicle storage on the bridge instead of in Menlo Park. So that would be the right thing to do. So this is all a consequence of the Willow Expressway not happening. That was the 1970s plan to connect Willow to Sand Hill Road. That the NIMBY problem has finally hit the fan, and the potential solution, is tunnels paid via tolls. I have 3 more minutes left, right?
Yes.
Okay. So the cost of tunneling has declined. Easy Pass and license plate readers reduce the transaction costs associated with it, and it's not so crazy. Elon Musk formed a company to pursue tunneling named the Boring Company, and incidentally, I should add, I have met and can connect you with a company that provides private financing for private-public partnerships that could finance such a thing if it can be funded via tolls. So it's never too soon to think about the entrance and exit locations on El Camino, and so I suggest on the northbound side of El Camino, in front of the new Stanford development, since this is now up in the air again, that would be the ideal place. And so anyway, self-driving cars and automated vehicles, they are around the corner. They would benefit from continuous flow and minimal accelerations. Larger turning radii allow maintaining momentum and minimizing nausea of the passengers, and they're much more energy efficient not to have to stop. We are entering the asymptote of, this is a graph that shows the relationship between congestion as measured in time of people, in queuing of cars, and the volume of cars. And so as more and more gets added, the consequence in terms of time wasted grows up exponentially. And we are in that an asymptote, and so this is going to become a more and more important issue. The good news is that when you're in the asymptote, small improvements result in dramatic improvements in time saved. It's not all bad. Another hypothesis that it would be in the best interest of Menlo Park residents for the city manager and the 3 members of the Menlo Park City Council who like this project to return my emails and phone calls. You know who you are. Anyway, so that's it. Thank you very much.
Okay, Gary, and I would be delighted to return your calls if you send it to me earlier than within 6 hours of the meeting. So I would be delighted to do that. That was your prior public meeting, too. Let me know 4 hours before it invited to me. I had already made plans. I apologize for that, but I would be delighted to meet with you. Just give me a little more notice. I appreciate it. I have a very busy schedule.
Thank you for letting me know.
Okay, great. And thank you for your presentation.
Thank you all.
Well, okay, would you like to?
Yeah, I
Yes.
just wanted to, thank you, Mr. Lauder, for your presentation. I just wanted to ask that Nikki Nagaya if you could come up as well. Just to remind us about why it was that we're doing this and why it is that Caltrans has decided to move to the partial, if you wouldn't mind. Thank you.
Good evening, council members. Nikki Nagaya, Assistant Public Works Director. So I think in general, what's before you tonight is an informational item on the update in the Willows and the traffic impacts we're seeing in terms of the construction as the signals were activated in November and December. The comments that Mr. Lauder gave tonight, we've talked about before. These are the same types of issues that were raised as the project was moving through the final stages of funding in 2015 and 16, as well as before construction, when Caltrans came before the city and gave a presentation on the benefits of the project. As Mr. Lauder said, the main reason for pursuing the project is the short weave sections between 101 and Willow Road. The traffic study that was done for the project that Caltrans prepared was based on data that was prepared, it was collected, in 2012, 2013. The traffic patterns today leading to the Dumbarton Bridge do have a very heavy pattern towards the bridge. That's not a surprise to anyone. If you're out there observing traffic, driving in the region, the Dumbarton Bridge is by and far the biggest constraint in the area, affecting traffic patterns through the Willow interchange out to through Belhaven, along Bayfront Expressway and out to the bridge. But those weave sections do exist. They do create congestion and do have collision patterns that the Caltrans data in the traffic operations report showed was higher than the statewide average for interchanges of the similar type. And so those are the underlying reasons as to why this project began. It was initially started in the 1980s. Different alternatives were reviewed. It was restarted again in the late 90s and early 2000s as the second round of funding in the San Mateo County was passed, and ultimately the design was chosen as one that would improve the overall delay at the interchange. In particular, as you look at forecasts out to 2040 that the Caltrans operations review looked at, those traffic levels, you start to see significant delay savings at the interchange on average. Does that mean every single moving through the interchange is going to improve? It does not. But the overall delay through the interchange is better with the proposed design that's under construction now than without it. So
the overall delay is reduced, and then
Wait, guys.
bicycle. I'm just going to ask a couple questions.
Well, if we're going to open it up, I want to open it up to everybody because we have this side of the table has their own opinions about the project as well. I really, as a point of order, would say if we're going to talk about this, perhaps we talk about the end of the evening.
What we did here is we wanted to allow Mr. Lauder the courtesy of being able to speak earlier in the evening. He requested that, and we'll do that. And I do thank you, Nikki, for at least making a few points. But rather than, we do have this agendized as I-1, I did want to provide the courtesy to allow him to speak, and thank you and Nikki to respond, but I don't want to go into the full discussion until we get to
Oh, I
I1.
guess
think-
I misunderstood. I thought that since we were allowing the public to speak on it now, that we were also going to have all of our,
I thought we were taking it out of order
Yeah, I
while
did too.
Mr. Lauder was still here.
that makes sense. If you're going to allow Mr. Lauder to speak, that we should allow staff to
Well,
speak
but
as well.
I understand that, but I would actually prefer that we didn't get into, because I do think we have other comments on other issues. We also have folks that are here for many of the other, I see folks in the audience that are also here for many of the other items. So while, and I apologize if I gave the misrepresentation that I was actually pulling up the entire item. I just wanted to give the courtesy to have some folks who had requested, wanting to make comments now.
Okay, thank you for specifying. I think it makes it awkward when we do that if we don't have a response,
Okay.
because there are two different opinions. And
Sure.
so I wouldn't want everybody here to leave and not hear anything from our staff to understand why it was that we did this, and just take a kind of one-sided view of it.
Okay, let me go through a couple of other comments here. I believe Kathleen Daly, not sure that I see this on screen. Kathleen may have a comment, not necessarily on this item, but Kathleen, you're welcome to come up now rather than have to stay. There's Annika McClure following her.
Hi, thank you for giving me a few minutes to just talk about something that's really important to me. The Willows traffic, as you know, I own a business at Minalto and Gilbert, and I'm here kind of representing all the business owners. That is a really busy corner, and I have front row seat, big picture window every day. And as the Upper Laurel campus has opened, that intersection at Minalto and Gilbert has gotten busier and busier over time. And I have some, it's not very sophisticated, they're hash marks, but I've been out there for about 5 different days. Once right before the break when it was incredibly busy, and then since the break has been over, watching and counting cars, kids, and north and southbound, watching 2 buses appear. And in a course of about 10 to 15 minutes, we have 2 cars either going northbound or southbound for every kid crossing the street at Oak Court. It is a perfect storm for something pretty horrible to happen. And all of this takes place in about a 10 or 15 minute period. And I'm here tonight. A lot of the residents in the Willows know that I've been collecting this. I've been talking to some of the parents outside. I beg the council and the transportation group, and I've talked to some of the people in transportation. I know they're working really hard to try to help the Willows get this traffic stuff figured out. But I beg you to consider moving the time on that right turn off of those 3 streets from 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock. What we're doing now is driving all the traffic to Minalto and Gilbert. And like I said, for every 1 child, there's 2 cars passing one way or another. Today, I counted half of those cars that were passing going the other way, turning onto Gilbert, as I watched these kids on bicycles bike down Gilbert to try to get home. If we moved it to 4 o'clock, we could at least get the majority of those kids home safe or onto the side streets or wherever it is they're going. But it's a perfect storm. And it's not sophisticated data, but we've been out there counting it. It really is 2 to 1. And the Willows residents know that I think this is really important. I've talked to parents sitting outside, and I know I have the support of a lot of people to just ask you guys to just move it back 1 more hour, keep some of that traffic away from Minalto and Gilbert. It's a busy intersection. Okay,
Great.
thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. Annika McClure, followed by Shawnee Rodell.
Hi, good evening, Mayor Otake and council members. My name is Anika McClure, and I'm a new public policy associate at the Silicon Valley Leadership Group. And as many of you know, SVLG represents over 300 member corporations in the Silicon Valley area, including member companies in Menlo Park, like such as Facebook. And I came tonight to invite you to our annual Washington, D.C. advocacy trip. And so what we do on that trip is we invite CEO members of our corporation and local elected leaders, such as yourselves, to come to Washington, D.C. and advocate on different issues that affect the Valley, including this year we'll be talking about issues including immigration, BART, transportation, cybersecurity, and things of that nature. The event, well, it's a 2-day trip, and it will be February 27th and 28th, and I invite all of you guys to attend. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Shawnee Rudell, followed by Tom Caldecott.
Hi, I'm Shawnee Podell. I live at 607 Bay Road. Hi, neighbor. The reason I'm here is because I wanted to talk to you guys about some of the traffic issues that we've been having, specifically almost every day now, and this has increased over the past couple years. I've lived on Bay since 2010. Traffic is backing up, sometimes all the way to Ringwood from Willow. In terms of kind of quality of life for the neighbors and everybody who lives around there, it's becoming a really big issue. If there's any problem on the bridge, if there's any problem with traffic anywhere else, it just backs up and it's total gridlock. Every single day when I pick up my kids from school, I can't get them in the driveway of my house. So I'm constantly trying to find some way to sneak down Van Buren and go around, whatever it is, but it's just become a really big issue. Then I see what's going on with the construction and it's just multiplying. And so I'm trying to figure out where do we go from here? Because honestly, it's just become so unsafe out there. And when I see my kids, I'm trying to decide if I should let them start biking to school. I'm scared to death for them. There's people flying around the neighborhood, driving down Berkeley and all the different side streets going, 40 miles an hour sometimes. It's a really big problem. At Willow itself, part of what I'm seeing is that people are just getting so frustrated by the traffic that they're constantly blocking the intersection. So I'm seeing them block the intersection not only at Bay and Willow, which of course just backs up down Bay, right? Because nobody can actually get out onto Willow. The other problem is also Gilbert and Willow too. So they're doing the exact same thing there. So I don't know if you can get some law enforcement out there to actually start kind of getting people to clear the intersection, but that would be really helpful. But it's been a really big issue. So the other part of this too is I heard Gary speak, and frankly, I don't understand the whole thing with the Park Low. What I do understand is I never get off at Marsh Road because I can't get off that exit to go west. Right? I can't get to my house. It's impossible. So I have to take Willow, and thank God we've had our own dedicated exit to go west. So as we look at this, the fact that maybe the people who live on the west side, everybody should be taken into consideration in terms of kind of quality of life and what we're going through. But that's something that needs to be looked at. So some sort of dedicated lane that's actually partitioned off in a way that people can't hog or whatever it is, something needs to be done. I was coming from Mountain View the other day going northbound. It was 3:30. It took me 40 minutes to get off at Willow Road West. That exit, people were trying to merge in at the last minute. I just sat there in the gridlock and I was going crazy. And that was almost Christmas vacation, so technically it wasn't even as heavy as a normal day of traffic. So please, please, please do something about this. I'm going nuts. Thank you.
Thank you, Shawnee. Tom Caldecott, and then Bree Chaffee.
Hi, all. I guess I was a little confused. I thought we were going to get to this a little bit later, but I will be more than glad to speak right now. I live on Arnold, and I've come in front of you guys a couple times. I just wanted to do a report that the signs are doing their job. They have cut back. Now, again, we've had the vacation, so the window is pretty short at this point. But it looks like it's doing the job. However, there are still the people who, as I've used the expression, behaving horribly, are still behaving horribly. But there are fewer of them. And we've had the police come out, and they've been giving information. The reports I've gotten is that there are still some angry people, but they don't seem to be angry people from the Willows, they seem to be angry people from Fremont and on the other side of the Dumbarton who are objecting to the signs. But the number of cars has diminished. We don't have the lineups right now. Again, I think it may be too early to tell, but it looks good. So there you go. And I can get out of my driveway. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom, for the feedback. We do appreciate that. Bree Chaffee.
Hi, my name is Bree Chaffee, and I live across the street from Tom at 816 Arnold Way, and I want to say thank you so much for putting in those signs. My kids can play safely on the corner in our yard. I feel like the health in terms of the neighborhood, the toxic fumes from 100 cars lining up is much better. There is the occasional person turning right, so I think once that 30 days passes, enforcement is going to be important. But I am really hoping that this becomes a permanent solution and a permanent thing, that the signs stay. I think that when the overpass is complete, it's going to remain a problem, cut through traffic through the Willows. So please, I ask you, consider to make it a permanent solution. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Bree. I have one card here from Jeff Abramowitz. I wasn't sure whether you had donated time. You did. Okay, great. Just want to make sure. Okay, thank you. All right. Thank you for your comments. And as I mentioned, we will discuss further during I-1. But for now, let's move to E1, which is a presentation of the 2017 City Satisfaction Survey results. And City Manager Alex McIntyre will.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. Every 2 years, the city conducts a community satisfaction survey just to get a gauge from the community how they feel about the services provided by the city, how they feel about their quality of life, and any kinds of specific issues that might arise from a survey of this type. We have hired Godby and Associates twice now to conduct this survey on the city's behalf. Charles Hester is with Godby, and I'll let him talk about the specifics of the survey and the results. One of the things I wanted to do was remind the council, this really is the very first step of the goal setting and budget process, in the sense that it becomes one of the pieces to help inform you, based upon the community feedback, on the kinds of things we might want to be aware of as we move forward with developing the goals for the city, getting to a balanced budget in June, and then executing on that. So, Charles, you're up, and please ask him all the questions you desire.
Welcome,
Great.
Charles.
Thank you, Alex. My name is Charles Hester. I'm Vice President of Godby Research. I am here tonight to present the results of the city's 2017 City Satisfaction Survey, as Alex alluded to. I am sitting in tonight for Brian Godby, who was the project manager on this, but had a previously scheduled meeting. So there may be questions that I will have to defer and get back to staff on, but I will do my best to answer the questions as they come, as well as go through this as efficiently as possible. It's about 25 slides, and I've got about 15 or 20 minutes of my time allocated. So if you want me to go quicker or more slowly, please just let me know.
And if you could speak into the microphone a little bit, that would be great.
Sure.
Okay, perfect.
So the first slide is about the overview and research objectives for the survey. The City of Menlo Park commissioned Godby Research to conduct a survey of its residents, adult residents, to gauge community satisfaction and priorities with the following specific research objectives: tracking results against the 2015 baseline survey data results, gauging the overall quality of life in the City of Menlo Park, identifying resident satisfaction with various city issues and services such as the downtown area, parks and recreation, public libraries, public safety, and public works, assessing potential voter support for a potential future bond measure or utility users tax rate increase to replace the aging Menlo Park and Belhaven library system with 21st century libraries that meet earthquake and fire codes, and funding that cannot be taken away by other agencies, including the state.
prioritizing projects and programs to be funded with the proceeds of a potential future bond measure or utility users tax rate increase, determining the impact and preferred information sources of city communications, and identifying any differences due to behavioral demographic characteristics. A little bit about the methodology for the survey. We've changed our methodology a little bit over the past several years. We've gone from a telephone-only survey process to a hybrid survey process. Telephone is somewhat dying, even cell phones these days. I'm a person that doesn't have a landline. I just have a cell phone, and I'm much more protective of that number and who calls me than I was when I had a landline and a cell phone, and I had a throwaway number, right? That was my landline. So we have broadened our data collection method to reach certain demographic subgroups that are a challenge to reach in surveys. So we did a hybrid survey process, which include an email to the online version of the survey and text to online version of the survey, as well as landlines and cell phones for the most inclusive process as possible. And you can see the breakdowns here in terms of number of respondents for each mechanism. The universe for the survey was sort of split. We did the public policy questions with adult residents in the community, the roughly 25,000 residents in the city that are 18 or older. We have a subsample for several questions that are related to the bond measure and the utility user tax of voters that are likely to vote in the November 2020 election cycle, which is roughly 16,150 of those voters. Our fielding dates were November 29th through December 5th. The average interview length was 22 minutes, and within our sample size, we have an overall sample size of 808 adult residents in the Menlo Park community, as well as 710 likely November voters. The margin of error for those, I'm going to round it up, is 3.4% for the adult residents and a little bit more, 3.6% for likely November 2020 voters. The first question in the survey had to deal with overall quality of life in Menlo Park. As we can see, if we're looking at the 2015 and 2017 data, we've gone from 86% very satisfied or somewhat satisfied down to 72.9% or 73% somewhat satisfied or, excuse me, very satisfied. It's a downward trend. We'll look at specific reasons for that as we move into the next couple of slides where we tested specific projects and programs and issues that are facing the city. You've heard many of these things tonight in the public comment, and I will get to the specifics of that. Having said that, in looking at this, it is a significant decrease in terms of 86% to 73%. Having said that, if we look at the individual response categories of very satisfied, somewhat dissatisfied, and very dissatisfied, it's a slight angle downward as opposed to a steep drop, right? We didn't go from 86% very satisfied to the same number of people being very dissatisfied. It's sort of a slope in terms of people having gone from being very satisfied to somewhat satisfied and somewhat satisfied to somewhat dissatisfied. But in terms of the very dissatisfied, it was a marginal increase. It is statistically significant. It's outside of the margin of error, but only by a single percentage point. There's certainly some opportunities here, and I think as some of these projects get wrapped up and the cloverleaf that was talked about earlier and some of the traffic calming measures within the Menlo Park community, and perhaps as housing gets built in this community, I would expect to see an increase in future years. The next slide has to do with satisfaction with the job the City of Menlo Park is doing providing services. Again, we've seen a decrease here, not as significant of a decrease. We've gone from roughly 80% to 70%, so a 10% decrease from 2015 to 2017. Again, we didn't see a big drop-off in terms of people jumping to very dissatisfied. It's more of a gradual progression, which again I think as projects get wrapped up and things like that, you will see an increase in 2019, perhaps with the traffic calming measures that I alluded to earlier and the finishing of the Willow interchange and more housing being built within the Menlo Park community. In terms of looking at a ratio of satisfaction to dissatisfaction, we're at about 2.6 to 1. In 2015, it was about 5.1 to 1. So again, we do have some decreases from 2015 to 2017. I guess before I get into the individual attributes, I should say that you're suffering from a commonality for many of our Bay Area clients, especially clients, city clients that have major east-west arteries as well as major north-south freeways. We do these sorts of surveys for cities like San Rafael, where 580 comes into 101, and the city of Hayward, where 92 interchange approaches 880, as well as the city of Concord, where you've got 680 running north and south, and 4 running east-west to the north of the city, and 24 running east-west to the south of the city. And we've seen similar decreases in these communities in terms of overall quality of life and provision of how well the city is doing in terms of providing services. So this is something that we're seeing Bay Area-wide. We've seen it recently in Los Altos and South San Francisco, where we've just done citizen or resident satisfaction surveys. So this isn't something that's unique to the community of Menlo Park. It's something that we're seeing throughout the Bay Area region, that we're almost a victim of our success in terms of more cars on the road and housing prices increasing to a point where they have become unaffordable for a major portion of the Bay Area residents. The next slide has to do with satisfaction with specific city services. We like to provide this information in a mean score format as opposed to a percentage format, and that is simply because if we just look at overall satisfaction, there's a huge difference between 50% very satisfied and 25% somewhat satisfied, as well as 25 in comparison to 25% some very satisfied and 50% somewhat satisfied. Those both add up to 75% in terms of satisfaction, but they're obviously two different numbers. So we provide this sort of information in a mean score formatting, with -2 being very dissatisfied, -1 being somewhat satisfied, 0 being neutral, +1 being somewhat satisfied, and +2 being very satisfied. If we look down the list here, the items in yellow are items that we asked in 2015, and the items in red we asked in 2017, and the items in red in 2015 for comparative purposes. There are a few that we did not track, but in terms of Tier 1 services, the good news is that folks are at least somewhat satisfied with libraries and facilities and services, police services, and approaching that with parks, providing park and recreation programs and events as Tier 1 satisfaction services and programs and facilities. Tier 2 includes providing clean, well-maintained streets and sidewalks, opportunities to attend cultural events and social activities, which is actually the only item here to have increased from 2015 to 2017. Then providing programs for senior citizens, neighborhood police patrols, communication between the city and its residents, and efforts to encourage pedestrian and bike travel. Moving on to the next slide, this is just a continuation of the same questions with tiers 4 and 5, and then the 4 items that we did not track due to space constraints from 2015 to 2017. And this is where we get into the sort of negative stuff here in terms of land use and planning. Had a very large drop off from being neutral to getting towards the somewhat dissatisfied level, similar for neighborhood traffic flow and traffic flow on major streets during commute hours. This is sort of the crux of the issue within the community, which is driving down the overall quality of life and getting the city somewhat attributed to that, even though you do not maintain all of the roads and freeways and things like that within the Menlo Park community, sort of being dragged down by that. So the issues obviously here are traffic and affordable housing. The next slide looked at the frequency of visiting downtown Menlo Park. We have many response codes here, but I'll just focus on folks that come at least once a week, and that is 71% of residents have said that they visit downtown Menlo Park at least once per week, and half of residents, or slightly more than half, 55%, visit it more than once a week. So that's very good visitation for the clients that I can compare this to that have active and vibrant downtowns such as Menlo Park. The next slide talks about ability to find parking in downtown in a reasonable amount of time. This is sort of the opposite of traffic. If we look at the top 2 response codes in terms of most of the time and always, we did not affix a time to this. Does it take you 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whatnot? So it's a very subjective question. So what one person's 5 minutes may mean always, and some person's 5 minutes may mean none of the time. But in looking at least at most of the time and always, 68% or greater than 2/3 of residents indicate that they can find parking in a reasonable amount of time in downtown Menlo Park most of the time or always. The next series of questions asked for support for a potential multi-use parking structure within the city of Menlo Park. The first one of these asked support for a 7-story multi-use parking structure. If we look at combining support and combining opposition, we've got 51% support and 43% oppose. It is statistically significant and different with the roughly 3.4% margin of error. However, if we look at that margin of error and apply it to the negative side, this could be as low as 47% or as high as roughly 53 or 54% of residents that would support a 7-story multi-use parking structure. The next question asked about support for an alternative 5-story multi-use parking structure. Again, we'll lump together support and opposition here, and we can see that support has increased to 60% from 51%, and opposition has decreased to 34% from 43% in comparison to the 7-story parking structure. So the lower the, or the fewer number of stories, at least for this particular slide, the more support is generated for a potential future parking structure in Menlo Park. The last one of these questions asked alternative support for a 3-story multi-use parking structure within the city. Again, we see that support has increased. If we lump it together, we're at 75% support this, as opposed to 60% for 5 stories and 51% for 7 stories. Opposition drops to just under a fifth of voters at 19% versus the 30% opposition at 5 stories and the 43% opposition at 7 stories. So clearly, as the parking structure gets smaller, support increases, and not only that, but the folks that are strongly opposed to that significantly decrease. Next question had to do with satisfaction with parks and recreation facilities and services. What I'll point out here is that we split the sample into 2 subsamples of voters so that we could ask more features of this specific question. So sample A of half the sample got the questions in green, half the sample got the questions in blue, and the red items in here are the ones that we tracked from 2015 as a legend for the specific slide. As we can see, recreation sitters, folks are just a little bit above somewhat satisfied for this using a mean score formatting system. Same for condition of sports fields and courts, and children's play areas sort of approach that. Tier 2 items, neighborhood parks, and Bedwell Bayfront Park are just slightly under somewhat satisfied, and the availability and cleanliness of restrooms, while it's still positive, is approaching neutral and has gone down from being somewhat satisfied to being in the middle of neutral and somewhat satisfied. The next question asked residents if they use the Menlo Park Library or services in the past 12 months, and if so, how they would rate those services: excellent, good, fair, poor, very poor, or have not used public library or services in Menlo Park. As we can see here, there's a little bit of a change and a little bit of a decrease from 2015 to 2017 in terms of looking at excellent and good. Having said that, it is not statistically significant, and I can't say that I cannot say that they're the same number. What I can say, though, is there has been a decrease in residents that have said that they have not used Menlo Park Public Library or library services within the city from 28% to 23%, which is statistically significant. However, it seems that most of those residents have labeled the library as poor, as fair, as opposed to good or excellent. The next question talks about support for improving the library system. Again, we're going to lump support here in terms of somewhat supportive and strongly supportive. We're just above a 3/4 threshold here and a 5.4 to 1 support to oppose for this. There's real very large support for improving the library system within the Menlo Park community. The strongly support approaches 50%. It is not quite, but almost double of the somewhat supportive. We like to look at strength of support when we look at questions like this, and you have a very supportive community in terms of wanting to improve the library system in general within the city of Menlo Park. The next question is where we went to the voter sample. So we've got a little bit smaller of a universe here, and even smaller of that because we split the bond measure question and utility users tax question into two subsamples so that we don't have voters conflating that both measures could be on the ballot, which is what happens if you sequence this and ask everybody about the bond and then everybody about the utility users tax. So we split this sample. It gives us a little bit less than a 6% margin of error, so I'll try to bear that in mind as I'm talking about results. So again, this is about, well, it is 1/2 of the November 2020 voters that are in our subsample of our universe. If we look at overall support for a bond measure at $50 million for 30 years to replace the aging Menlo Park and Belhaven library system with 21st century libraries that meet earthquake and fire codes for the various items here within the 75-word ballot question limit, we top out at 61% total support. That could be as high as 2/3 at 67 if we're on the high end of the margin of error. Having said that, it could be as low as 55% if we're on the low end of the margin of error. The other sort of issue that I have with this specific result here is, again, we like to see the definitely yes to probably yes at 2-to-1, and we're less than 1-to-1 here. It's very soft support for a bond measure. So this would be a tough slog to get on the ballot in 2020, which is our universe that we were looking at for the bond measure. The next slide talks about support for a utility users tax increase. This is the other half of the November 2020 voter universe. If we look at this, we are at 53.4%. Having said that, that could be as high as 59. It could be as low as 47, but you're much closer to achieving a threshold that would win on election day, assuming that this is a simple majority measure, than you are for a bond measure at 2/3 among the November 2020 voting electorate. The ballot question was the exact same. It's really just the funding mechanism. I guess what I would say here is while you do have some strong opposition against this increase at just under 1/3 of voters, I think you could probably firm up support and perhaps grab some of the somewhat opposed and the DKNA, which is the don't know, no answer folks, by providing more details for this. If you remember, the bond measure had a duration. Bonds are typically 30 years, but it had a $50 million price tag to this. What this says is, you know, would you support or oppose the city council increase in the current utility user tax rate to the 2006 voter approved 3.5% rate. I think that by providing more information here, you could certainly firm up support for this measure and get yourself well above the margin of error at the 50% threshold, again, assuming this is a simple majority measure as you move towards 2020 with public education and outreach. The next slide talks about features of the measure in terms of how money would be spent and information that could be communicated to voters through public education and outreach at the city level or perhaps through a privately funded campaign for or against the measure. So we're looking at the features here. The top two tier features, they're all tier 1 features here. There's really no, well, there's a statistical difference between item A and item G and item G and item L, but the others are all fall within the same margin of error. So the top testing features are 2/3 of the cost of the main library would be paid for by private donation, meaning that city taxpayers only need to pay for 1/3 of the cost. The next several ones have to do with lifelong learning and working closely with schools and what could potentially be added to the library for children's areas and youth and students and things like that. I won't go into this in too much detail, but these are pretty good for features of measures. We're not really advocating for or against the measure. We're just providing information to be close to or slightly exceeding the somewhat more likely level for voters to support a measure. Now we're looking at the Tier 2 features of this. Again, we're looking at moving from 52% to 70%. These would sort of be ancillary information that could be provided to voters with limited impact in terms of moving voters for a bond measure or a utility users tax. The one thing I would point out here is the one thing that we tested that was slightly positive, but just barely, and something that may make it into a ballot question or a ballot resolution, is the library could be rebuilt as a mixed-use facility, including a new library, affordable housing, and civic uses. This is probably folks, thinking in terms of cost versus what a library provides, but this was the one that was the lowest testing feature. But again, it was still positive. Next question was on opinion of effectiveness of the police department addressing neighborhood concerns. This is very similar to the use opinion on library services. We saw a slight increase from 2015 to 2017 of 0.7%, but again, that's within the margin of error, so it's not statistically significant. However, we did see a decrease in the folks who did not have an opinion or could not provide an answer from 2015 to 2017, and those folks seem to have mostly gone to the fair category as opposed to the excellent and good, poor or very poor categories. Next question had to do with specifically online sources that are preferred sources for the community for their news and info. It does not have to be a city-provided information source. It can be anything. Nextdoor.com, like many of our other clients, continues to rule the day at 40%. I guess I should also say that respondents could provide more than one response here. So this adds up to more than 100% and significantly so. Emails, we did not specify between entities and private citizens and the city or whatnot. So emails in general at just over a third. The county almanac at just under a third. Then we get to the city's website at just slightly over a quarter of residents mentioning this specific online source for community news. Then the Palo Alto Daily Post, Bay Area News Group, and then Facebook, internet, blogs, Instagram, and other. The other is 1.5%. We sort of looked at this and sort of aggregated this together because it didn't make sense to have things that were 0.01 and 0.02 and whatnot. The next question had to do with preferred newspaper or print sources for community news and information. Again, respondents can provide more than one response, so the aggregate of responses is greater than 100%. Palo Alto Daily Post is the preferred newspaper or print news source at 41%. County Almanac is second at just over a third at 37%. Then the Merc at 15%. The Chronicle at 11%. San Mateo Daily Journal at 7%. And then other, again, there weren't anything that was above 1% or worth reporting in here in terms of that, but that data is in the crosstabs. I guess one thing to note between these two questions is the DKNAs from question 16 to question 17. I don't think anybody needs to have this repeated to them, but print news is dying, right? So about a 25% or a quarter of respondents couldn't list a preferred print news source, as only 10% for an online news source. The next question had to do with satisfaction with city communications. Again, this was with all adult residents in the community, and the legend here is we split the sample again, so the items in green are ones from split sample A, and the items in blue are from split sample B. Items in red are ones that we tracked from 2015, and the items in yellow are ones that got asked of everybody. It's just only one that got asked of everybody. So satisfaction with city's communications, stories in the almanac, positive, although a slight decrease, but not statistically significant. Email notifications from the city has gone down a little bit since 2015. That is statistically significant. The city's website is next in line at 1.06 using the mean score formatting. The activity guide is just at the same level roughly at somewhat satisfied. And then we've got the tier 2 items in terms of news stories in the Palo Alto Daily Post, and then the tier 3 items in online and cable broadcast of council meetings and Facebook and Twitter. And that's the end of the presentation. Hopefully I didn't take too much of your time, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you have.
Great, thank you. I believe we have one speaker card on this from Jen Willison. Good evening, Jen.
Good evening. I'm Jen Willison, resident, and you may not know, but I have a strong background in market research, so I'm very familiar with surveys and polling. And I heard about this survey from my friend and neighbor who called me one day and said, I just got a call from the city with the survey. And I said, tell me the questions. And he told me the questions, and then a few hours later on Nextdoor, I saw residents posting about this survey as well. And the consensus that I heard from the survey, and my concern hearing what the questions were that the question, particularly regarding the bond measure and the library, was very leading, and that there wasn't any attempt in the survey to distill the need for a Belhaven library and a main library. And having been in the market research world, you only ask the questions that you want to get answers to. And I'm very concerned with the city's lack of curiosity to ask the question and separate out the question of a desire for a Belhaven library and a desire for a main library. So I have just issues with that data in general, and I hope that you are curious enough to think that through when you look at these results. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jen. I did, so certainly I did see some of the responses asked about both. So there was at least, it included, my understanding, both in those questions, correct?
We did ask about both, and what I should say is she's right. When we do revenue measure surveys, and we had 54 measures on the ballot in California in November 2016, and won 94% of those. We've done 93 to 94% win rate for 27 years. This was a process that had sort of dueling research objectives, right? We're asking about city satisfaction, but then we're also trying to get an initial read on a potential future bond measure or utility users tax measure for 2020. For our revenue measure specific surveys, we go into much more detail in terms of where the money would be spent. We go into more detail for arguments for the measure and arguments against the measure. We ask a second ballot question and whatnot, and that sort of gives us the data that we need to recommend moving forward for any sort of measure, whether it's a bond or a parcel tax or utility users tax or sales tax or any of the other bevy of funding mechanisms that cities and counties and other public agencies can use. We're looking at a November 2020 universe. If it was the council's druther to move forward and explore a potential future bond measure and or utility users tax, we would recommend doing a much more detailed survey of likely voters in whatever universes that we're talking about, where we can glean a lot of that information that we simply couldn't ask in this survey. It was a 22-minute survey, and folks that are in the market research industry will tell you that you can't keep somebody on the phone for longer than 22 to 25 minutes before you see a significant rate of attrition in those later minutes. And since we ask demographic questions at the end of the survey, that means we have to replace the entire interview, right? Because I don't know then if the data that we get is representative of the larger voting universe for whatever election cycles we're looking at, November 18, November 2020, June 2020, whatnot. So having said that, she's right. We did get limited information about a potential bond measure and limited information about a potential utility users tax increase. And again, at the council's purview, if this is something that you would want to move forward with, I think that we would recommend a much more comprehensive survey, potentially testing whatever funding mechanisms that you decide on. It could be both of these, it could be one of these or whatnot, in the, I want to say, mid 2019 timeframe, looking at a November 2020 election cycle, so that you could give the city enough time, or we could give the city enough time to make an informed decision with a full revenue measure feasibility survey instead of just a couple of questions within a resident satisfaction survey.
Okay. Councilmember or Vice Mayor Mueller.
Yeah, so first, I've had lots of questions about the poll for the library. I just want to say, in an open and public meeting, we did discuss the fact we need to do a poll on the bond, and I think you probably remember that. Folks remember that because you want to do that before you make a decision to take a bond to the public. That being said, I have been asked about the text of it, and just so I don't have to keep telling people I didn't propose any of the text for that, nor did I review any of the text for that question prior to the poll. Alex, the one thing I want to say, the other thing I wanted to say is I've had questions about, and I talked to you today about this isn't online yet. It is going to be, the poll and the questions will be online tonight.
Correct. We will upload both the presentation and the specific survey results online, if not tonight, first thing tomorrow morning. Yes.
Okay. Where can people find it online? Because I've had multiple people reach out and say, okay, that's great, but where on the city website is it going to be?
Okay, I have an answer here apparently. So menlopark.org/2017 satisfaction survey.
And will that be on the front of the web page, or where is it? Like which page do they go to?
I'm just looking across at Clay because he's giving me the answers. So it'll be on the city manager's department page.
Awesome, thank you.
And if I can remind the council really quickly, typically we would do the survey in September, October. That was our typical goal. And as the library issue started getting some traction, we realized we had an opportunity, because we do this once every 2 years. We thought, well, why don't we take advantage of GLADB going out into the market just to find out what people are thinking about both the library and the parking structure. We did both those topics. And one of the things you will note is when Charles gave the presentation back, you'll note there were questions we didn't answer, questions we didn't ask, so we couldn't show the trending, because we had to sacrifice other questions so that we could ask the more in-depth questions about the library and the parking structure. And so we really just saw this as an opportunity to sort of go out and sort of get a feel from the public about their sense about the library and the parking structure. I think it's been somewhat helpful to at least inform you as to the general sentiment. And as Charles said, you would never rely on this data alone to make a decision on a parking structure or a library measure.
Great. Councilmember Carlton.
Sure. Just for clarification, Vice Mayor Mueller spoke in the first person. I don't believe anyone on council saw the questions. I wasn't aware that it was being done early. So just to clarify that it was not done with any guidance from council.
Yeah, I can't speak for anybody else, and I'm not imputing there's anything wrong with it. I just had asked the question so many times. I wanted to clarify it.
Right, and to be clear, this whole survey comes out of my office, and typically we don't go to council members seeking approval of the questions, because it starts to turn into, one of the things Brian Godby was very clear about is you don't want to publicize the survey in advance, because you really want to catch people cold and catch them, what's your reaction to this question? Rather than starting to put it out into the community and people can start to think about it and formulate answers, it's really meant to be, what do you think about this? And here's the answer. So we very intentionally don't bring these to the council for their consideration.
Okay. I don't see any other lights. My additional question is related to traffic. And you had mentioned that all the cities, whether it's on the peninsula or East Bay, have similar responses and issues related to traffic. Is there any difference between neighborhood streets versus major streets, between what you found for us versus other cities? Because I'm trying to get this idea, is it cut-through traffic or just
Sure.
gridlock on the major
So
routes?
within Menlo Park, we asked for neighborhood traffic flow and then traffic flow on major streets. I'd have to go back and look at some of the ones that we've done for other communities. All communities are unique, and we don't have an off-the-shelf survey process. This is something that's done in an iterative process with each client, mostly cities and counties and school districts that conduct this sort of satisfaction research. Having said that, I can go back and take a look at what we asked in some of those communities that I mentioned, Hayward and San Rafael and Concord. I'd like to be able to do it for every city that has a major east-west artery and a north-south, but I don't, but those are the ones I have, and I can look at that data and see if we asked major streets versus neighborhood streets within those, and then get that information back to council through staff if you'd like to see it.
Okay. Actually, I would later, if you follow up just with me offline, in an email or something, that would be great. I'm just curious about that. Just one final comment. You know,
No, go ahead. I'll
okay.
wait till yours.
I do think the results are very useful and good indication. I also didn't see any questions, and certainly apologize if anybody felt that they were leading in any way, but I do think they were good questions to ask when you have very limited amount of time with folks on the phone. Those would be some pretty good questions, and I think that and again, recognizing this as sort of a preliminary, it's just trying to gather info, and so I do appreciate the effort and the
If
data
I
that
could
came
make
in.
just one more comment to add on what Alex was saying, and I'm sure Brian reiterated to staff as we were working through the questionnaire, not only do the questions need to be out there and not ideally not provided as a public document before we do the survey. We're more than happy to have it up there on the website after we do the survey like we do. We also have a limited ability to change questions and be able to track data over time, right? If we change the response codes, then it becomes hard to track, and if we change the questions, it becomes hard to track. So, most of these questions, aside from the bond, utility tax, and parking structure questions, were asked in 2015. And again, we have a limited ability to change any of those if we want to track that data.
Okay, great. Councilmember Keith.
Thank you. Thank you for your report. I appreciate it. And I do know the 2015 survey is up there, and we'll have this one up really soon too, so everybody can dive into all the detailed questions, which is really helpful. And I appreciate all the information, and I hope that, I'd like to ask you, did you find that these questions were leading, and how do you address leading issues?
I can say this. I don't find the questions leading, and we've been in business for 27 years. I've been working for this company for almost 20 years. If it got out there that we were doing push polls, which is what a leading question is, that would be the last project that we did for any community on the peninsula, Santa Clara County, Marin County, it would be the end of our business is sort of what the long and short of it.
Okay. I did not, I was not called to take this poll, so I have no idea, what the questions are until they're all polled tomorrow as well, or put online. And then I did want to just say the traffic issue that Mayor Otake was bringing up. I appreciate the fact that when you started bringing out this information that you talked about, cities with major arteries or highways have these same problems on the quality of life issue, and you talked about San Rafael, Hayward, Concord, Los Altos, and South San Francisco most recently, I suppose?
Yeah, Los Altos and South San Francisco both in the past month.
Is your microphone on?
I apologize. Los Altos and South City were both been in the past month in terms of fielding the survey. Concord goes back to mid-2017, and I want to say Menlo Park, San Rafael and Hayward were early 2017. So I think far enough into the economy that we are now to sort of make those comparisons. But again, we may not have asked those questions in the exact same manner as we asked them in this community.
I understand. I think the point, though, kind of speaks for itself, and I wanted to highlight that because, I've lived here for over 20 years, too, and was here when the recession hit in 2008 and saw what happened to Highway 101, for example. It was a breeze to drive on. And now we are suffering because of the robust economy and the jobs that are here and the lack of housing. And I think that's what you highlighted in here was the transportation issue and the housing issue, which are topics that we talk about all the time here. So I think that's important to look at. Of course, you always want your surveys to go up, that satisfaction goes up and not neutral or down a little bit. But when you look at the transportation and the housing problems, it's interesting to note that is, and I think most of us in this room know that, this is a regional issue in an economy that is booming. It's not to say that we don't want to do things to try and alleviate, which is what we're trying to do, and we talked about that earlier tonight about changing turn patterns onto Willow Road, for example. So trying to do things to help ease the situation and doing a transportation master plan, which we're in the middle of. And I appreciate what you also said. I think it's true that if we, right now, as Mr. McIntyre pointed out, we waited to do this survey so we could get some of these library questions in, but this is not the be-all, end-all. And I think that we would need to probably do a little bit more research on that. with more specific questions as we move forward. So I think this was good. When I saw the length of time, the 22 minutes, I thought, oh, wow, that is a long time to hold somebody on the phone. It's, you know, in the age of Snapchat and Instagram. So I'm impressed that you had so many people stay with you and take this. And I was really pleased also to see that the quality of police services, I'm looking for, oh, there he is, Commander, our police chief, interim police chief, Commander Bertini is here. But it was good to see that response rate had gone up as well. So congratulations also to the police department on that. And library services, obviously, doing really well. So thanks for that. There are definitely things that we continue to work on. So this was very helpful information. Thanks.
All right, and I'll just reiterate that the survey will be posted at menlopark.org/2017 satisfaction survey, as well as a link from the homepage as well. So, great, thank you. Next item is F1, under Commission Committee vacancies and appointments. Consider applicants and make appointments to fill 3 public vacancies and 2 city council member seats on the Belhaven Neighborhood Library Advisory Committee. And interim city clerk Clay Curtin will introduce the item. Clay, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council. In October 2017, the City Council unanimously voted to create a Belhaven Neighborhood Library Advisory Committee. At that time, we began recruiting, and to no avail. We had no applicants through the month of November, but we went out again through December, and then concurrently with the other openings we were recently recruiting for, we received 5 applications for your consideration. So I would open it up for nominations.
I think Councilmember Carlton, you may have had your light on first. Would you like to go ahead?
Sure. I was surprised we had only 2 that had library cards. And since we are trying to recruit people who are active members, I think that's important to take into consideration. But Veronica Gonzalez is bilingual, and I also think it's important to make sure that we have. So Veronica Gonzalez, we have, I think, a tradition of only putting 1 name forward each, so I would put her name forward because I think it is important to encourage a bilingual person to be on the committee.
Okay, so you're nominating Veronica?
Uh-huh.
Did you have another nomination? Or
Well, I would do the other 2 who have library cards, but I'll.
You'll start out with that nomination?
Yeah, I don't want to hog the nominations.
Okay. Councilmember Keith?
Thank you. I'll nominate Pushpinder Lubana.
And Councilmember Klein?
Nominate L.J. Anderson.
All right, then I guess I will come in and nominate Tiffany Lai and Michelle Boer for being active library users.
I just want to speak on that active library user thing. I mean, one of the reasons why we have a library, why we're doing this, is because the library facilities in Belhaven aren't that great. So, so kind of holding it against people, they're not that great, but so they didn't get a library card. Like, obviously, they're interested in the library. If we improve the facilities, maybe they're going to get their card.
That's true, but it does help to understand the system going through and getting the card.
I would agree with you. I think that was, you want people who have some notion of using the library.
Okay, that is all of the applicants. They have all been nominated, and before we vote, and Clay, I'll let you run the voting in the order of nomination, but I do want to make a comment to all 5. Thank you for submitting your applications. You're all very well qualified. We very much appreciate it. So don't take it personally, and we'd love to have you involved in other commissions and activities. So Clay, go ahead and.
Okay, the first nomination was Veronica Gonzalez.
And you'd like us to show our
Yes, by
show
hand, please.
Hands.
Okay. Second was Pushpinder Lubana. Third was L.J. Anderson. Fourth was Tiffany Lake. Okay. With receiving majority of votes there, Tiffany will be one of the spots. Fifth was Michelle Bory. Okay. Second spot. So then it comes down to...
Excuse me, Veronica got 3 votes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I had Councilmember Carlton and Councilmember Mueller. Who was the third vote?
Yes, I
Otake,
did
okay.
as
All right. Then that is it. So we have filled the spots with Michelle Bory, Veronica Gonzalez, and Tiffany Lake.
Right. I just want to say something for the record, just because these are public documents. I don't think our council meant to infer that if they hadn't used a library card here in Menlo Park, that they had no notion of how to use a library. I think we just was colloquy from the bench. So.
And it doesn't mean that we don't really appreciate them coming forward. We hope they stay active in the process.
Great. Thank you, and thank you again for all applicants.
Mr. Mayor, we also need 2 city council representatives to this group.
Great. Do we have a volunteers here on the council?
I can do it. I'm on the subcommittee for the library, some of the work now, so I can do it as well, but I'm also open if there's other people who really want to be a part of it. I'm flexible.
I think it makes sense for the library subcommittee, so I'll turn off my light.
Councilmember Keith?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, I'm sorry. So I missed that. So it's Rich?
And Kirsten.
And Kirsten. Okay, great. Thank you, both of you. Appreciate it. All right, I think that is the input that you needed. All right. Next
Mr.
item.
Mayor,
Yeah.
I have one conflict on the consent item, on one of them, so I can
That's
vote
right.
for all except for G8.
Correct. Got that. Is there, so we'll first vote on, let me also mention that G6, which is related to the Marsh Road and Independence Drive, that is being pulled and continued to the next meeting. And then I know in the city council minutes, I just wanted to note that there was one correction which I had already provided Clay, which was the last name of Supervisor Simidian, that was not, his name was not in the minutes, so that will be adjusted. Are there any items that you'd like to pull? And we're not going to vote on that, the one that you're recused yet. Okay. So
I'll move approval of the remaining, which is all of them except 6 and 8, with the amendments that you mentioned.
do we have a second?
Second.
All right, and I'm going to switch my screen over. All right, let's go ahead and vote.
The motion passes unanimously.
Great. And now we will take up G8, which is the North Lemon Avenue.
I'll move approval of G8.
Okay. Is there a second on that? Great. And ready to vote? Okay, great.
The motion passes. Councilmember Klein is recused.
Great, thank you. All right, now at regular business, item H1, which is the city clerk's random selection of the first 3 advisory districting committee members' input on city's community outreach and engagement plan for transitioning to district elections and appropriation of additional funds for the districting project. Interim City Clerk Clay Curtin will introduce the item. And I also will mention, while you're getting set up, I want to thank everyone who applied. I'm going to just put that up front. I know we were a little worried whether we'd have it. I'm very pleased to see we got a good, large number that did apply. So go ahead, Clay.
Okay. I'll just have a brief presentation to talk about where we've been since the council last acted on December 12th. At the December 12th meeting, the council adopted a resolution with a few changes, but it essentially established the advisory districting committee and set forth their criteria, which was modeled after the statewide independent redistricting commission guidelines. We also set forth a few requirements regarding the vote needed to put forth a recommendation to the city council and the schedule, as well as included a section where it states that it's the city council's intention to approve the committee's recommendation. The eligibility requirements included some that we include for other commissions and committees, such as you must be a registered voter. This one also added that you must be a Menlo Park resident and resided in the city for the last 5 years, and have voted in 2 of the last 3 local Menlo Park City Council elections. In addition to that, from the statewide guidelines that we modeled after, there were pre-service requirements. The pre-service requirements were a large part of what we vetted all of the applications against to ensure that the eligible pool of candidates tonight was able to move forward. They included some very restrictive items about past involvement with campaigns, with central party committees, lobbying, and campaign donations. Following the adoption of the resolution on December 12th, outreach began later that week. We worked diligently to partner with community groups. We contacted anyone who had previously contacted the city clerk's office about interest or questions regarding the districting process. We reached out to anyone who spoke previously at city council meetings or public hearings on the topic. In addition to our regular outreach, which includes email, social media, website, we also had stories that appeared in the Almanac, Daily Post, in Menlo, and Patch.com. We ran advertisements in the Almanac for 2 weeks, mailed postcards to every parcel in the city. And the outcome was that we received a total of 29 applications before the deadline. Since then, 2 have withdrawn their applications, and in the pool that I'm recommending tonight, I'm throwing out one that does not meet the residency requirement. This individual had lived in unincorporated Menlo Park, part of the county, for several years, and then has lived in Menlo Park proper for 4 instead of 5 years. So that individual is interested in requesting a waiver. That will be up to the council. Tonight, we're asking your direction to have me actually do the random draw, and then to provide feedback on the public outreach and engagement plan, both today and going forward. And then, as outlined at the staff report, we're asking for additional funds to shore up the staffing for the committee going forward.
And just one other comment. We did just learn tonight that there was one person that was in the pool who is actually serving on a central committee, and therefore that person is also being withdrawn.
Correct. That is already noted on the PowerPoint.
Is the name of the person who's only been here 4 years on this list that we have?
Yes, it is.
And so is it going to be in the pool when you draw the names? or no?
Not unless your direction.
Okay.
Unless you direct
I just wanted to
otherwise.
be clear on that. I didn't understand.
Yeah.
Did you have anything else, or is that?
That's it.
Because I think we do have several speakers here, so unless there are any clarifying questions, I think I'd like to go to public comment on this item. Charles Jameson is first on this item, followed by Fran Dean.
Hi, everyone. I'm the fellow with 4 years residency in Menlo Park proper and 2 years before that in unincorporated Menlo Park. Heard about the committee based on previous Almanac articles and then saw the specific postcard saying that you were interested. I'm very interested and qualified in participating in the committee. I have previous professional experience in mapping. So I worked with 10 separate clients to create districts and regions for sales forces. I'm also civically engaged and have relevant volunteer experience. In general, I think the 5-year residency requirement cuts out a large portion of the residents of Menlo Park in terms of having a voice in the city's development, especially those who are renters or those who are younger. So I'd be eager to be on the committee to represent those voices.
Thank you, Charles. Very much appreciate that. Fran Dean, followed by Steve Chesson.
Good evening, Fran Dean, Chamber of Commerce. Mayor Otake and council members, the Chamber of Commerce has followed the City Council decisions to review and consider election options to transition from the current election process to a system of electing City Council members by district. And finally, tonight, establishing the Advisory Districting Committee to recommend district maps for boundaries and the election sequencing process for council election seats in 2018. And now that the process to select the Advisory District Committee members to draw district boundaries has begun, we offer our observations and comments. First of all, the process to choose members of the Advisory Districting Committee has been designed to be an open and transparent process. After randomly selecting 3 qualified applicants from the pool of individuals who have applied for this commission, those original 3 members will choose the remaining 6 committee members from the remaining pool. This subsequent selection process and any and all meetings should be open and transparent, public meetings adequately noticed so interested parties can attend. Second, the members of this committee should be a diverse group of individuals from different geographic neighborhoods, from different socioeconomic backgrounds, from different ethnicities, and be gender balanced. Everyone's vote in all neighborhoods matter equally, and as such, they should be treated equally to arrive at a fair, impartial, and balanced committee. Third, the city should ensure that the selection and mapping process is transparent and consistent with applicable California state laws and regulations so that it is not susceptible to subsequent challenge. Safeguarding the finality of the redistricting process is critically important so that the residents of Menlo Park can move forward with this new system of electing council members in 2018. The Menlo Park Chamber of Commerce represents all Menlo Park businesses, each contributing to the vibrant nature and economy of our community. On behalf of the Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors and its members, I'm here tonight to express the Chamber's intent to follow the redistricting process. This process must be fair and equitable, not only to Menlo Park neighborhoods, but to Menlo Park business centers as well. While we have questions as to how the process will exactly unfold or the urgency to which we're establishing districts, we are respectful of the process Council has selected. We thank you, members of the City Council, for your integrity and your leadership at this time. And we also want to thank all committee applicants for their willingness to participate in and their contribution to the districting process. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fran. Steve Chesson, followed by John Kidvani.
Mayor Otake, council members, my name is Steve Chesson. I'm president of Californians for Electoral Reform. It is important that the Advisory Districting Committee be given accurate information about the requirements for districting by staff and others. For example, it's been said that the maximum population deviation in an acceptable plan is no more than 10%. I did some research, and according to the American Civil Liberties Union, as presented in their report, Everything You Always Wanted to Know About Redistricting But Were Afraid to Ask, I'm going to quote from here, plans with a total population deviation under 10% are presumptively regarded as complying with one person, one vote. Plans with deviations between 10% and 16.4% are acceptable if they can be justified based on legitimate considerations incident to the effectuation of a rational policy. Plans with deviations greater than 16.4% are regarded as unconstitutional and are probably never justifiable. They then give examples of rational policies that can justify a deviation between 10 and 16.4%, including complying with the Voting Rights Act. And for the city attorney's benefit, they do cite the appropriate case law supporting those points. I bring up this specific example because a 6-district plan that includes a complete Belhaven district and just Belhaven, but not excluding anyone in Belhaven, would have a deviation between 10 and 16.4%. The materials on the city's website would lead us to believe that that's unacceptable, yet case law says that would be an acceptable plan. There's also been a question raised over in the city of Fremont as to whether the size of a city council can be changed by an ordinance without a vote of the people. Fremont is a general law city that was served with a California Voting Rights Act notice letter early last year, and to avoid a lawsuit, the council voted to go to district elections. They did it themselves. They didn't have an advisory committee. They did not reach out to the plaintiff's attorney. The plan that they adopted also increased the size of the council, and it's that point that is currently being questioned. So I would recommend that the city and the committee research that issue before considering a plan that changes the size of the council. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Steve. John Kadvani. Nice to see you. Welcome.
Thank you, Council. Happy New Year. I'll follow up on Steve. I'm here just to also talk a little bit, make a couple points about process, as Steve Chesson did. One is simply, again, this issue of the size of districts. I wrote you an email earlier, and even the simplest 10% rule has variations in it. If you think of this as being your 10%, it can move around. It doesn't have fixed boundaries. The rule is the max minus the min is 10%, but you could have something low over here or something high over here as long as that window's okay. This is important to get right. The website is not clear on this. It's important because it may affect the definition of so-called District 1, which would be Belhaven. Second issue is this idea of election procedure. What's the right word for? What's the second word? Sequencing. Sorry, sequencing. This is very different from the districting process. Because there are only 3 seats opening up, only 3 districts will vote. 2 districts will not vote. That's what election sequencing means in concrete terms, and it's part of the recommendation that the committee will be giving you. So please start talking with them about what your expectations are. Some of you may be voting on an option for which you have an intrinsic interest as potential candidates. Possibilities, you can talk about this in process terms. It can be, you could say, well, we should just flip a coin for both of them, in which case, any outcome is possible. Also, please clarify if that presumably District 1, aka Belhaven, presumably is going to be one of the 3 voting districts. It would be very odd, given the California Voting Rights Act context, not for them to be voting, which means there are just 2 districts to make a decision about. But again, it could be flip a coin. Some might argue that if there are 2 candidates possibly running, well, fairness says they should both be able to run, or maybe neither should be. Or maybe one could argue, well, we should have one incumbent district and one non-incumbent district. Whatever it is, I think this decision is going to be harder to make, possibly, than the districting decision itself, which I think is a little bit more policy wonkish and real ultimately objective. So those are the two issues to think about. One is just clarifying the size rule. The other one, take up as soon as possible, really this evening, just some thinking in public about what the second major district of election sequencing is about. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Are there any other speaker cards for this item? Okay. We'll come back up here. Are there any questions or comments on this? Not seeing any lights, I certainly think we'll be moving into the motion stage, but I do want to think we ought to talk about the one applicant who didn't fit the full 5 years, but is certainly fairly close in terms of both 4 years and I also want to appreciate that he spoke. I also know that districting for sales territories is as emotional as we're doing with redistricting. But having said that, we're not involved in the picking decision. So that will be part of the initial 3 members. If he's part of that, they will do that. So that's no consideration. But the point about whether the waiver, I did want to discuss that. And see what my fellow council members felt about waiving and allowing that applicant to be part of the pool. Excuse me, something in my mouth. Councilmember Carlton.
Sure. Thank you so much for coming and speaking, and you're obviously qualified. My only concern is we have to be absolutely doing this by the letter. We have to be completely transparent and fair. And I think if we say, well, okay, we're going to change from 5 years to 4.5 years or whatever, we then have to open up the pool again because there might be someone else who says, well, hold on, if I'd known it was 4.5, I would have applied. That's not fair. And I think it's either we open the whole thing up and change the rules, or we stick with what we have, just in terms of making sure that we're fair to everyone involved.
Okay. Thank you, Catherine. Councilmember Klein?
I'm actually just in agreement with that comment. I think we can't roll back what we said we were going to do, even though I agree that, it's a shame because obviously there's qualifications here, but I just think that we'd have to start over a little bit.
Okay, Councilmember Key.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Thanks for coming and speaking, but when I do look at the resolution that we specified this so that everybody who was looking to apply read this, and I would think we would just have to start over if we were going to make an exception. The only reason I would find an exception is if we didn't have enough applicants, but we do. So thank you for applying.
Okay, so we've heard from 3 on that. Councilmember Mueller? Vice Mayor Mueller?
So it's been decided. The one thing I would say to you, though, is submit your maps. So you're a mapping expert. I'd love to see your maps. So thank you.
All right. Is there any other discussion on any other aspects or questions? All right. Do we have a motion? So there's 2 parts of this motion. First part of it is to direct the interim city clerk to select the first 3 advisory districting committee members, and then to the other aspect I knew you were looking for was appropriation of additional funds for the project. Is that correct in terms of the?
Those are the action items. And before you actually do that, I just wanted to make one comment. And all of these meetings are open, public Brown Act meetings. There will be agendas. The initial selection committee is going to be done on a fairly short timeline, and so will depend on the 3 people who are randomly selected, but we need to get the committee up and going very quickly. So if anybody's interested in knowing about the date of that, they should check and watch the city website or let Clay know if they want to be contacted, or receive an email about setting the date. But the first meeting is going to be on a very short notice, but everything else, they'll adopt a meeting schedule. They're all open public, and even the first meeting is open public, and people can attend, and anybody who wants to give input that is not on the committee, they have an opportunity to speak at each one of those meetings.
Okay, and I also did think some of the potential guidance, some of the comments that we received from the public, if indeed they are validated, ought to be shared with the committee.
They will be. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we'll verify those that information. I think those are good points that were brought up by both of those speakers, and that information will be provided. And again, people will have the opportunity to comment to the committee on recommendations regarding sequencing, et cetera, too.
Okay, great. Is there a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to direct our city clerk, and with the help of Clay, of course, to randomly select the 3 members, and then also reinforce the city attorney's comments about the public emphasis on these meetings, and then also the appropriation of $45,000 additional funds to support the committee.
And do we have a second? I'll second the motion. And I think we're ready to vote.
The motion passes unanimously.
Great. Thank you.
So then Clay's going to draw the names so that we have the names selected and we can announce those this evening.
Oh, we're going to do that.
Should we cover his eyes? Yeah, look at this guy.
It's not quite as good as Powerball, right? The first name is Honor Huntington. The second name is Michael Hoff. And the third name is Mark Heim.
All with an H as the last name. So, anyway, all right. So congratulations to those 3 initial out of 9. And thanks again to everyone who applied, and certainly thanks in advance for those who will be serving on the committee. We know it's going to be a lot of hard work in a very short time period. And to everybody else, we very much welcome you to, as our city attorney suggested, please come to those meetings, provide input and comment. I know that will surely help to improve the deliberations of the committee. All right, with that, we're on to item H2, which is to provide direction regarding placement of a city charter on the ballot and discussion of the scope and timing of a possible charter vote. And I believe City Attorney Bill McClure will introduce the item.
Yeah, I'm actually just going to turn this item over to Cara Silver from the City Attorney's Office, who is going to actually make the presentation and walk you through it.
Great, thank you. Good evening.
Great. Hello, Mr. Mayor and Council. So this is a presentation on transforming to a charter city and the requirements for the formation of becoming a charter city and the timelines involved. So just a brief background on the difference between charter cities and general law cities. In California, there are two classifications of cities. There's a general law city and charter city. Most cities in California are general law cities. General law cities receive their governing authority from the state legislature when it comes to matters of municipal affairs, and we will get into what that term means later. Charter cities, on the other hand, receive their governing power from a charter, and a charter is similar to a constitution, and it is a document that must be approved and adopted by the voters. So in terms of the benefits of a charter, there are typically two major benefits. The first is that, in theory, charter cities have more authority in the area of municipal affairs than general law cities. Also, what this essentially means is that charter cities have the ability to take into account local conditions. They're not handcuffed by sort of general all-purpose rules adopted by the legislature. There also are disadvantages of being a charter city. Changes must be voted on by the voters. So once a charter is adopted, any changes to that charter must be voted on by the voters at an election. Also, once a charter is in place, the voters can change the local authority of governing authority and do that more easily by adopting charter amendments. We have seen this happen in the area of, say, pension reform, for instance. Voters have have proposed charter initiatives that take away local authority from the governing body in this area, and we've seen it in other areas as well. Another issue that crops up in charter cities is that there is always a tension between what is a municipal affair versus what is a state issue. And that's an issue that there's some tension between the legislature in that it attempts to encroach into the areas of municipal affairs. We also see the courts get involved in those decisions, and there's frequently some uncertainty when you're navigating in the gray areas between what is a municipal affair and what is a state issue. So in terms of municipal affairs and statewide issues, as I had mentioned, the charter cities' powers preempt state law in the area of municipal affairs, which is the primary benefit of being a charter city. Areas of municipal affairs are set forth in the California Constitution, but they are also an evolving area, and we see the courts weigh in on these issues. And we've seen an ebb and flow and the change in municipal affairs. Right now, we're seeing that the courts are classifying more issues as statewide issues as opposed to municipal affairs, and cities are seeing their local power being taken away some by recent court decisions. Typically, the list of common municipal affairs are construction, contracting. Many cities have chosen to become a charter city because of the ability to exempt themselves from the state requirement of prevailing wages in the construction area. However, that has been taken away somewhat by recent legislation known as SB 7, which has given some incentives or taken away the incentive to do that because state funding now is tied to state funding is not given to cities that have taken away prevailing wage requirements. Charter cities, that is. Another municipal affair common area is land use, and the charter cities are not governed by some of the provisions in the government code that you typically see in the land use field. There are some areas of land use, however, that the courts have determined are statewide issues, such as housing. So typically, charter cities are subject to the government code provisions dealing with housing issues because courts have classified those issues as matters of statewide concern. We also, it's also common that city finances fall under municipal affairs, and so charter cities are given more leeway in terms of enacting certain tax measures and finance measures that general law cities do not have. And lastly, the government structure is a matter of local municipal affair. And that is where we see that come up most frequently is in the area of elections, which leads us to the topic that we're focusing on tonight, and that is a limited charter for election purposes. And when we embarked on the districting initiative, the council was interested in seeing a variety of different election alternatives, and they formed the Districting Commission, which will look at a 5-member district and a 6-member district. But the council also wanted to see and evaluate different forms of voting methods, such as cumulative voting and ranked choice voting. And when we researched that, we found that a general law city was not permitted to implement these two types of voting methods. And in order to implement those, Menlo Park would need to become a charter city. The city has also expressed some interest in looking at a hybrid voting system, which would involve a certain number of by-district elections and then a certain number of council seats that were voted on by the whole city or at large. That would also require a charter authority. So, in terms of the process for adopting what we are terming a limited charter in order to implement some of these voting measures, the council needs to follow the procedure set forth in state law, which requires the adoption of a charter in the first instance at a general municipal election. And of course, general municipal elections occur in November of even-numbered years. So the first election that is available for the council is November 2018. In order to adopt a charter, the state law prescribes a very extended hearing process. It takes approximately 75 days to actually go through the hearing process to adopt a charter and just to put it on the ballot. Finally, the charter, as I mentioned, does need to be approved by a majority of the voters at an election. In terms of drafting the charter, there are 3 ways to do that. The council can draft the charter on its own or direct staff to draft the charter and review the actual charter language. Secondly, the council can form an advisory committee similar to the districting advisory committee that you recently formed, and that committee would make recommendations on charter language and submit that to the council, and then the council would run through that elaborate hearing process. And then the final method is to form an elected charter commission. And in this case, there is a statutory provision that creates an elected charter commission. It has to have 15 members. Those members are elected by the voters, and the charter commission is given 2 years to draft the charter. Many of the older cities that have adopted charters a number of years ago went through this 15-member charter commission process, but it is really not used very much lately. In terms of policy considerations, the biggest advantage of moving forward with a charter initiative, especially at this juncture, is that it really is the only way to implement any different type of voting methods if the council wanted to pursue those, given the current state of the law. And then the disadvantage of moving forward with a charter provision is that it does not automatically shield the city from a California Voting Rights Act violation if you were to implement some of these hybrid voting measures that did not fall within the immunity provision of the CVRA. We had mentioned the extended hearing schedule for implementing a charter. And so the hearing criteria requires a 21-day hearing notice, and then it requires 2 public hearings. The 2 public hearings have to be separated by 30 days. And then at the conclusion of the second public hearing, there is another 21-day period, and at that point, the measure then can be delivered to the county registrar to be placed on the ballot. So given those constraints, we put together a proposed schedule that incorporated the assumption that you wanted the charter committee or the charter proposal to occur at the November 2018 election, and it assumed that we used a advisory committee. It would be very difficult to utilize an elected charter commission given the fact that they have by law 2 years to implement their recommendations. So the schedule is put on the board here. We have we would have to have a meeting on February 6th for you to discuss the criteria for selection of a charter committee. We would then have a 30-day recruitment period, similar to what we did for the districting committee. And we would probably follow the same very aggressive outreach for this committee that we followed for the districting committee. Then on March 13th, we would have council appointment of the committee. And then the committee would only have 2 months to deliberate in this schedule. And there really is no, there's very little slack on this schedule. We think that 2 months is a very aggressive period for the committee to get its arms around the issue of charters, even if it were just charged with a limited purpose charter. Then starting June 5th through July 17th, we would conduct the hearing process that is required by state law. And then on August 8th, we would have a special council meeting to vote on the charter proposal following the 21-day waiting period that's required by state law. And then on August 10th, we would submit the charter ballot measure to the county for the vote. So with that, we are asking 4 questions for the council's consideration and direction to staff. The first question is obviously whether to pursue a city charter. The second question is we would like some input on the scope of the proposed charter if you do decide to pursue it. And we would thirdly like input on whether to establish an advisory or elected charter committee. And then the most significant question is some input on the timing of whether you wanted the charter vote to be in November of 2018 or November of 2020. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Are there any clarification questions initially? Otherwise, I will go to, we do have a list of public comment on this.
So can I,
Okay.
before you do,
Yes.
I mean, there's one thing that wasn't part of the presentation, and that is the appropriation and staff bandwidth. And I think, Alex and I have both talked about it, and we both have some concerns about the bandwidth, staff bandwidth, city attorney bandwidth to work on a charter committee or staffing a charter committee. At the same time, we are staffing the districting committee and the other things that you've already kind of adopted in the work plan, and that you have the work plan coming up. And so it's a staffing issue, but then it's also, you will need to appropriate, we're estimating kind of a minimum of $50,000 to staff, because we would need to bring consultants in to make presentations and information about cumulative voting and ranked voting and hybrid issues and the Voting Rights Act. And so there are a lot of both legal and just, practical policy issues that would have to be, the committee would have to be educated on. So it's we don't want to understate what that work effort is as part of your deliberation. So we didn't incorporate that into the presentation, but I think we need to get that out on the table.
Okay, great. And I know I'll have some follow-up questions for you to elaborate further on that. Let's go to public comment. John Kadvani is first up, followed by Pamela Jones.
All right. Hello again. I wanted to say I agree with the staff, the sentiment of the staff report that it would just be not a great idea to go forward with a 2018 attempt right now. It's just not enough time to educate the public and have a meaningful debate regardless of resource considerations. Just wouldn't make sense. At the same time, I think it's totally worthwhile to plan at least one significant study session with, let's say, a 2020 target date, if for nothing else, to figure out if we think a 5 or 6 district option, which we will have in November, is the right thing for Menlo Park. We can't figure that out without starting a pretty deep discussion on it. So I think we have to sort of do that anyways. So and there are just a bunch of issues to be thought about, including federal uncertainty with the 2020 census we're hearing about. Current knowledge about Menlo Park's demographics. We know the 2010 census is out of date. We're using it anyways. There's probably thousands more residents going to be appearing on the north side of town. Relevance of the California Voting Rights Act, it's potentially under litigation. All this stuff, it's worth having a mechanism for floating all this stuff, talking about it and so forth. And just finally, again, a personal interest of my own is to have a discussion about what we think is best for the city in terms of voting practices for residents, and also what the responsibilities of new district council representatives will be. What, do they have more of a responsibility to their district than they do to the city as a whole? What, sort of what is it about? On the voting, I don't like voting only 4 years when there are 5 people up here. That's just, that's my personal preference. I hope we could somehow get our way out of that. I think that would be better for everyone in the city. So generally, I think starting a process, which is in the context of the charter, not deliberately going for a charter immediately, is the right thing to do, and I hope we have the resources to do that at least once before November 2018, because I think some of you are going to be changing out, and I think it's worthwhile to hear what you have thinking as this process is going on, forming these districts. This is all top of mind, and then the next time we talk about it, say in 2019, we'll hit the ground running. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Pamela Jones, followed by Steve Chesson.
Good evening again, Pamela Jones, Menlo Park. I'd like to again say thank you for the commitment to our advisory districting committee, and a special thank you to Clay Curtin. I'd like to offer a word of caution as we discuss moving forward on the creation of a charter city committee. Prior to the completion at the implementation of by-district elections. This action may appear that we assume that by-district elections will have a negative impact on the quality of our city councils. The most commonly stated challenges are too few candidates, eliminates highly qualified candidates, balkanization or silos, and failure to compromise for the city as a whole, just to name a few. Our current level of resident civic engagement demonstrates exactly the opposite of this. The number of applicants to the Advisory Districting Committee, the Belhaven Neighborhood Library Committee, the citing of library meeting attendees, the Menlo Child Care Center concerns, and most recent, the Charter City comments, shows that people in our community are engaged. We are, in fact, a deeply engaged and progressive city. So the question is, what is the best voting system for our city? While discussing the placement of a charter city on the November 2018 ballot, please consider the following. San Mateo County is one of 5 counties implementing the Voter Choice Act. We will be voting in a very different manner than we have done previously. That's going to take considerable education throughout our community, and we need to understand that. 2, the district elections will begin in 2018 with only 3 districts voting, regardless of whether we're a 5 or a 6 district city. The remaining districts will have an election in November 2020. The 2020 census won't be available until November 2021. Keep those things in mind. So prior to completion of the timeline, we may not even have sufficient information to address the real question. What is the best voting system for our city that guarantees all residents are truly represented? Because that's why we're going to at large by district. I suggest that rather than making a decision tonight, either yay or nay, how you want to go, consider the additional information being provided by our residents, particularly. Amazing emails coming to you. Look at what the voting choice experts are saying, as well as your staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Pamela. Steve Chesson, followed by Jen Willison.
Mayor Otake, council members, my name is Steve Chesson, president of Californians for Electoral Reform. I think it's important that Menlo Park begin the process of forming an advisory charter committee while the interest in how the city elects its council is high. It may be that such a committee would not finish its work in time to put something on the November 2018 ballot, but that is not a reason for delaying the process. I am concerned about some of staff's comments in the report, prejudging that such a committee should be formed only if the council wants to pursue putting an alternative electoral system on the ballot. To me, that's putting the cart before the horse. An advisory charter committee should study all the alternatives, including continuing with single-member districts. It may decide that no charter is necessary. As for the concern that only single-member districts provides immunity to a California Voting Rights Act challenge, if, for example, the city ends up adopting a 6-district plan with a mayor elected at large, that also has no immunity to a CVRA challenge because it contains an at-large component. But plans that use alternative electoral systems, such as cumulative voting and ranked choice voting, have elected members of protected groups elsewhere, and as long as that happens, then your electoral system has no cause for a CVRA challenge. I also take issue with a reference to a 7-year-old article on the Oakland 2010 election as a recent controversy. That election was special for many reasons, and it would take me more time than I have to give the topic justice. Suffice it to say that there have been dozens of non-controversial ranked choice voting elections in the 4 Bay Area cities that use that system, both before and since the Oakland 2010 election. And I would also point out that any electoral system can produce a result deemed controversial. I'm sure you can think of many examples in the recent past. As for the staffing issue, I would point out that your proposed schedules for both committees have no overlap. The district committee ends its work according to the schedule in February 22nd. Your charter committee would not begin its work until March 14th. Therefore, I don't think there would be a burden on staff because they wouldn't be supporting both committees at the same time. So please begin the process of forming a charter commission to study electoral options for Menlo Park. As always, our organization will be glad to help. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. Jen Willison.
Good evening, Jen Wallison again. First of all, thank you for putting this item on the agenda and for appointing the advisory districting committee. These are great steps. And I also appreciated the comments from John Kadvani and Pam Jones. As you may know, I've been working with a group of residents. We're calling ourselves Menlo Park Residents for Good Governance. And as a group, we were strong on pushing for the advisory districting committee. When it comes to asking for a charter commission now, we've been a bit split, and we've been going back and forth on whether this is the right thing for Menlo Park to do at this time, at this moment. And we've been to meetings with Fair Vote California, Represent Us, Californians for Electoral Reform, and I think all of us are very intrigued by the ranked choice voting method and for these hybrid methods that we've been hearing about. Mainly, many residents we know, as we've seen you've been emailed, are concerned with district elections, and there's a desire to push quickly through this districting process to an alternative electoral process. And there seems to be a few reasons to do this move right away. That you can only put a charter on the ballot in even years. That there's momentum now and people are paying attention to electoral process, so strike while the iron's hot, and also to satisfy a lot of residents who are concerned about balkanization from district elections. However, as Pam alluded to in her public comment, as Ms. Jones alluded to, pausing might not be such a bad thing at this time. And as Mr. Kadvani said, there would be an opportunity for more civic engagement, to have study sessions. A lot of us have been running around racing to learn about ranked choice and hybrid options. And those of us who are actively working on this and trying to engage are still getting caught up on these issues, and we want to make sure that the rest of the city catches up with us. Also, moving directly from district to another electoral system, I think brushes over maybe some of the thoughtfulness that our city could spend a moment contemplating about why we are moving to district elections in the first place. And I think going directly through 3 electoral processes in 2 or 4 years or whatever it is, could speed us through some contemplation about the representation that's been lacking in Belhaven. And I think by forcing some of these community engagement opportunities and this community dialogue, it could be really healthy for our city. And finally, we really want you to make the decision that's in the best interest of the city. We know that staff has limited resources. We also know that the city's goal setting is coming up in a few weeks for 2018. So if there's ever an opportunity to be able to move resources around, now is the time. And whatever decision you make, please just keep in mind the best interests of the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Are there any other speaker cards? Thank you. We'll now bring it back up to the dais here. Are there any questions or comments? So what I will do is just to the follow-up question, Bill, regarding trying to understand this issue about bandwidth. No question from a city staff standpoint, we have a lot of projects and limited bandwidth. This project all falls more within the sort of council's office, your firm. Also, the point that was raised in one question, or by one of the speakers, I think Mr. Chesson, that they are actually, that the districting committee finishes its work hopefully by the end of I think it was March, and then we've got some this committee or charter committee potentially, if selected, would start its work after. Can you give me a little more sense of the concerns over staff capacity for this?
We put in a lot of hours for the city of Menlo Park, and so last year I put in about over 1,000 hours for Menlo Park. Lee put in over 1,000 hours for Menlo Park, and we, 3 other attorneys in the office put in another. I was close to 500 hours. Lee is still doing a lot of work on development projects. Cara has joined us. And so last year was too much time. I put in a huge amount of billable hours last year. And so I'm trying not to work that hard this year. So part of bringing Cara on board was to even things out. And so having 3 of us spending a lot of hours. But it's just, there is work every day for a lot of different issues that pop out completely out of left field, and we have no ability to not deal with those emergent issues as they come up, whether it's having to do with some legal processing question having to do with interpretation of one of our codes, or it's kind of constant, whether it's email, phone calls, meetings, et cetera. And so it's adding in something that is going to have, in order to get a charter amendment on the ballot for this November, it's probably weekly meetings and a lot of preparation and making sure that all of the information is there, making sure that all these members are complying with the Brown Act. It's it's just a lot of different time and work, whether it's me, whether it's Cara, whether it's Lee, Jen, whomever. It's trying to get all that, fitting that in with a certain number of hours. And this is in a compressed time frame. So even though the committee might be finished, you're not going to be finished with your work on the districting committee, at the beginning of March, which is really when this would be starting up. And there's even, working on the staff reports to get the staff reports out so that you can select it, and approving kind of and creating the resolutions for what the assignment is to the charter committee. And so even getting this on, February 6th to start this off, that's a big chunk of time to create that staff report and make sure all of the information and issues are before you. So it's there's a lot of pre-work, and there's a lot of then work that goes into getting each one of the reports out and preparing for each one of those committee meetings that will have to be done to meet all of the Brown Act requirements. And then there are going to be a lot of questions that are going to come up. There are going to be a lot of emails that are going to have to be reviewed, and input that is given and processing, and a fair amount of research. Now, fortunately, Cara comes from a background of charter city. She was with Palo Alto, so she understands the charter and the process. But it's still, even with the knowledge and background, it's a big project. It's not a little project. So that's why, just again, can we do it if you want to do it? Yes, we'll figure out a way to do it. And speaking for Cara, of course. No, I mean, we will, but it means that some other things may get pushed off. They may get, because if I've got 3 things that I've got to review that are ready to come forward, which gets which has to be done. And so the things that have a hard time frame, hard finish date have to get done first. And so, you know, there are a number of things that are in process, you know, updating the BMR ordinance to comply with the new state law changes. I mean, there are all these kind of different projects that all have to get done.
Okay. And another question is the scope of the charter committee does not have to cover actually drawing any maps. It's more they would be more about looking at like ranked choice, some of these other
right. I mean,
alternatives.
if the
So they don't
direction
have
is
do
to
the map
limit
work
this,
type.
the only way we could do this in 2018 at all is if you limited the charter, if you will, of the charter city committee to only looking at election system. And again, it could be retaining the single by district election. It could be ranked voting. It could look at cumulative voting. It could look at hybrid, you know, district and I guess it could even be a hybrid that is ranked or cumulative voting, you know, with district by district elections. I mean, there are a lot of different alternatives, I guess, that could be considered. So nothing would be off the table in terms of what could be considered, but the information and the viability and the legal implications and then knowing what the election is there an election system that would work, and could that be run by the county or would it have to be run by the city? Would we have to have our own voting machines or paper counted ballots, or how would we do some of these, you know, if it's a different type of system that's not approved by the county, that requires getting information to the county to report back to the committee. You know, so ultimately a recommendation can be made. So there are a lot of moving pieces, and clearly, you know, we don't, and nobody on city staff or in the city attorney's office has any real knowledge or expertise in ranked voting, cumulative voting, and some of what the other alternatives or choices would be. So we need to bring in the resources to do that, and that all of that is fine. There's certainly, you know, people like Steve and other people that are knowledgeable that can bring in their point of view and perspective and knowledge, but we also need to bring in other people that might have a different perspective on, you know, so there's a balanced information that's provided.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Any input or comments, Councilmember Klein?
No, I think a lot of the points have been made, but I am intrigued with the idea of you know, getting more knowledgeable and starting to look at the potential for a charter city for all the reasons I think everybody here knows. But you know, I hadn't thought about it becoming part of our real kind of driving agenda until 2020, looking at 2020 as or even 2022, to be honest with you. I didn't think 2018 was at all on the agenda, so I'm a little surprised 2018 is even considered right now, because knowing this organization, Menlo Park, the limitations, the amount of things that we have, I think it's highly unrealistic. I think from the outside it looks like it's a process that's very easy to follow, but knowing our city and how many things we have to do, I just don't see that as something that would be wise.
Thank you. Any other comments, Vice Mayor Mueller?
So I actually just wanted to talk it out with you guys because I'm not really leaning one way or the other yet. I think it's actually something that it obviously is a promotion of local control to do it. My only concern is when we do it, all of those, and I think Bill, you probably touched on this, all of those wonderful features of state law that we rely on and we didn't need to have code for, we will now need code for. So going through that process is not going to be easy, and then certainly you probably are going to want a robust engagement process around that. It's not like you're drawing a map and everyone looks at the map. There's a lot of intricacies on what you're going to put in that initial charter. If it was an idea that you were going to create a Band-Aid charter for the moment, and then you'd have a robust process to fill that in over time, there might be like a hybrid solution where you could do it that way. Where you just said, okay, we're going to adopt, this charter looks good, and then over the course of 2 years or 4 years, we're going to go ahead and actually, color it in and fill in the blanks and take stuff out, then that's possible to talk about. I don't know how, I would rely on your expertise to say if that's possible, if people have approached it that way before, where they wanted to do it with speed and then went in and sharpened that over time. Is that something we can do?
It certainly is. You can get kind of the bones and the structure in place and then fill it out later. But there has to be a commitment from the community and the committee and the council that will occur over time.
If you wanted to just take that approach, which I would call like the Band-Aid hybrid approach, where you're just getting the bones down and then you're going to put, do a 2 to 4 year process to really fill it in and color it in. What does that look like in terms of resources for this year?
I think that it still is going to be very ambitious for this year because, as you say, given this community where you start a process like this, people are going to want to weigh and balance all the pros and cons, and it's hard to submit something that the community feels is incomplete. They don't have all the answers, and it may not even pass.
Yeah, I mean, the second thing I wanted to talk about is like, what are it's obvious that in the context that we're talking about this, it relates to elections. But as I look at the survey tonight of what people are talking about, they're not talking about elections. They're talking about transportation. They're talking about the nexus between commercial development and housing and quality of life issues. And so what I'm really interested to know is there ancillary benefit to all of those things that people care about to doing this charter process? Because at the end of the day, my concern is I don't want to get wrapped up in a process that gets us away from actually focusing on what we're hearing from residents is affecting them so much every day.
So certainly becoming a charter city does have some benefits in the area of transportation and zoning and land use and housing, those types of issues. But again, those issues will not be covered in this Band-Aid solution or limited purpose charter. And even it would be difficult to even set up a framework without having outreach on those particular issues. There's no guarantee that those issues will be addressed, in subsequent years with just a very limited charter dealing with elections.
So with that being said, I want to go ahead and let other people talk, but what I am interested in is that if we're not going forward tonight, what I would like to do is have a report back on how becoming a charter city affects those other issues. Because we're talking about it in the context of election, but I'm actually really interested in, elections, we'll figure the election thing is, what I'm really interested in is how is this going to affect the quality of life of my residents for the good? Right? Like how do we use this? If we're doing this, how are we using this tool to address the problems that are being so captured by the residents right now and the feedback we heard in that survey tonight and what we're experiencing every day? So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Carlton.
I want to echo a lot of what my colleague said, but particularly I do think it's good to look into being a charter city, but very narrowly at this point. Because this is opening up a giant can of worms, as you point out, on all the other things that we could do. I feel like we need to start off with addressing the issue at hand, which is how to improve the system for voting, and focusing on that individual aspect. Because I think if we open it up to doing everything at once, this could take, it took us, 6 years just to do the zoning for downtown? If you talk about putting together a full charter of the city where we're addressing all the codes for everything, that's Herculean. And we would almost by definition have to take it in chunks. And so if we move forward in this, and I think this is the direction we should go in, it would be starting off very specifically at the issue at hand.
Catherine, I just want to follow up. Do you have a recommendation from a timing standpoint? So I do understand, I heard you in terms of wanting to limit the scope. Are you advocating from a timing standpoint to put it on the ballot in 2018, or are you recommending starting the process, but not necessarily for 28 for the limited charter?
If we do the full-on thing, it won't be for 2018. I've spoken to people and believe that it is possible to do it for 2018 because of it stops in March, it can start in March. We can keep going on the narrow issue of the voting, but not on any of the other aspects of it.
So so it's the limited portion. Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that. Okay, Councilmember Keith.
Thank you.
Keep wanting to say Mayor Keith.
Thank you, Mayor Otake. Thank you for your presentation on this, and I just want to kind of go through a little bit of. I thank you to everybody who spoke, the 4 speakers tonight. John, you brought up some good points about possibly doing a study session to look into this for 2020. I think this is a big deal, and I think I would like to see probably not just the Band-Aid approach, but that we have a comprehensive look at what this would or would not do for the city. And one of the things that you brought up was that SB 7, which ties state funding to prevailing wages. So that's something, I'm sure that's just one thing you brought up. So I'm sure that there are so many other laws tonight that are not being brought up because we don't have the time, and we didn't ask you to, but I would want to know about all the other laws that would affect us going forward with the charter city and what it really means and what the benefits are. And I think it's a worthwhile discussion. I don't see it for 2018. I think that's too short a time frame. And when I see that you need the information, I think it was by August 8th, a special city council meeting. And, some of us won't be here August 8th. I'm sure we could change dates and things, but we did do a meeting schedule. So, and I think we all have it up here now tonight, but it's a very short time frame, and I get it. We're doing a lot of things on a short time frame. And then Pam Jones spoke about the redistricting that we're doing. And we are doing this, and we're doing this because of a threat of a lawsuit, actually. So the city is threatened with a lawsuit, and so because of that, we are taking on all this, which we didn't anticipate last year until we got the lawsuit, or the threat of the lawsuit. And, this year we could also receive another lawsuit for whatever. I mean, you never know when you're going to get a lawsuit. In the beginning of last year, we got a lawsuit from the city of East Palo Alto. So in 2012, we got a lawsuit on housing issues. So lawsuits can come up at any time. And I know, Steve Chesson, you talked about that these might not overlap. And I hear, and I've seen, and speaking, with Mr. McLaurin being up here for so many years, that, we never know when we're going to get a lawsuit. And you have to respond to that immediately. Those take priority. And then we also have a very busy work plan that we're looking at. And we do have a study goal setting coming up on January 29th, which I would encourage everybody to attend. It's open to the public to talk to us about what you would like to see us focusing in on. But I know that we're going to have a lot of the same projects that we didn't get to yet this year that we're still going to be focusing on when we sit down to do our goal setting. So there are so many worthwhile things that we can do and that we need to do, and we keep plugging along and doing them. And I look forward to goal setting to talk about, how we want to proceed this year. But with lawsuits, you just never know where they're going to come from. And I think I appreciate what Mr. McClure said about the bandwidth, and I'm glad that you have other people that you've brought on to help with the legal capacity for our city, because we need it. There's no doubt about that. So I wouldn't be in favor of doing this for 18 for those reasons, but I would be in favor of having a study session and looking at it.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask you to put up the last slide where you had the series of different things you wanted input on? Okay, so again, to help us make sure we're getting some consensus of guidance to you. So in terms of my comments, on number one, whether to pursue city charter, I'd rather sort of say yes to exploring a city charter. I do want to put effort into that and to look at whether a city charter makes sense for Menlo Park, particularly long term. and specifically related to what is the best long-term electoral system for us. I certainly, when we were doing the deliberation last fall about districting, some of these other alternatives, such as, not necessarily alternatives or additions, you call it ranked choice, there's some appealing aspects to that, but I will be the first one to admit that I have not done the work or study to look into that. But I did come away with that we could only do some of those options if we explore, unless we'd have to explore city charter. So I am in favor of exploring a city charter long term. The number 2, input on the scope of the proposed charter. I would like to certainly initially focus on the electoral aspects and not, turn it into a large discussion. Although I do recognize what Vice Mayor Mueller was saying, that if there are some ancillary benefits, I'd like to know about that as we go through that process, as well as pitfalls. Ancillary pitfalls that come along with that. So I do think that should be part of that process. Input on whether to establish an advisory or elected charter committee. I get very worried when an elected, when I understand that the elected charter committee would be a 2-year process. Whether it's 2018 or even 2020, that's pretty tight, and so I'd probably lean toward the advisory, but do what we did with districting, which was to make sure that the criteria set for committee members gives it the independence, gives it the transparency that I think our community likes to see in such a committee and process. Fourth, input on timing of the charter vote. This is certainly the hard one. I don't really have a strong, a strong desire to necessarily, do we have to do it now, or can we, do it for, but I do think we don't want it to string out forever. I mean, I'd like us to focus on starting the process so that we'd be in a position to get something to voters in 2020, and then that would allow us to take in census information coming out in, essentially, it would be the end of 2020 into early 21, and therefore actually have it impact the 2022 election. And I'm looking in this direction because I want to make sure I'm understanding the timing. It's going to voters in 2020 that would affect if adopted, would affect a 2022 election versus 2018 affecting a 2020 election.
That is correct.
Okay.
And the census data comes out in late 2020, mid-2021.
Okay. As much as on the one hand, I'd like to, move expediently forward, I also do know we got a lot on our plate, and I also want to make sure we're doing it right. And I do think we ought to capitalize on the fact that there is a lot of interest, right now, but not have them right on top of each other. So, whether that's study session or something that allows us during the summer to at least, begin the process and have it go into, really 2019, where 2019 is really the year where we focus on the charter. There's pros and cons. I'm concerned about the confusion and then having the census and doing that. Also, I'm sensitive to wanting to see if maybe the districts by districts will, might take hold, and we don't. It's sort of uncharted territory, I guess, to use a pun here. And let's see what happens. But I could be swayed if there's strong interest in wanting to do something quicker. That's sort of where I'm coming out with. So I just want to give it one more chance from the standpoint of timing.
So this is my only thing about why I'd be interested in doing it now, and that's why, because I feel like so much of our time this year is going to be wrapped up in all of this anyway, that we're not going to get a whole lot of other stuff done, frankly. And so I don't want to have happen is I don't want to be continued to wrap up in all of this for like years ad nauseum. So if we're going to be doing this now and it's going to be painful, part of me is like, let's just make it painful and be done with it. So I don't know how you guys feel about that, but I'm just like, man, like the idea that I'm like 2 years from now, we're still going to be going through this and talking about this instead of talking about projects and doing other things and like, great, exciting, transportation and all of that, but that we're still going to be like slogging through just very basic questions about who we are. That seems a little painful. I know it's important, but so I'm kind of like, if it's going to be that painful, let's just get it over with. Let's bite the bullet. But then again, I'm not the one biting the bullet, right? So, what's
Vice Mayor? Oh, sorry. He's Vice Mayor Mueller. All right. Councilmember Keith.
Thanks. I would just say, in looking at this, I mean, I was sort of surprised it was here in that we're doing goal setting on the 29th. And so I think a good place for this is probably bringing it to the goal setting so we can look at it within the context of the other things that we want to do. As Vice Mayor Mueller was just saying, the transportation projects, the housing projects, the other things that we know people are clamoring for. So for me, I would propose just putting this over to the 29th and seeing where it rises amongst all of our priorities.
Any other? I think I know where you are on it. Councilmember Carlton.
I think it's not a bad idea to put it in with the rest of our priorities and see how that fits in. I also thought Ms. Wilson had a point when I believe it was Ms. Wilson that said we have momentum, kind of to your point. We have momentum, we have people interest. Pull the Band-Aid off all at once rather than really slowly in terms of really addressing this while it's in the forefront of people's minds and while people are working on it. But I am very sensitive to making sure that we do this in a timely way that's respecting other things we have to do. So okay. I'd be happy to take this up at goal setting.
Okay. I think, and I would concur with the suggestion about seeing it, how it fits with the many other city priorities, and and I think that makes sense. So did we provide you at least some pretty good guidance if not necessarily a decision tonight?
Can I ask at the goal setting, and it doesn't have to be like a big report on it, but just the other benefits besides the election, besides the election issues, just some things like it can just be highlight overview of how it affects all of those other issues would be really great.
Sure, we'll be happy to provide that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next item is information items. Certainly, I don't know if there are any follow-up questions on items. Typically, we don't have staff presentations on information items, but staff is available for questions. But certainly, I know we had gotten comments earlier on I-1. I didn't know whether we wanted any follow-up comments. Okay, great.
Yeah, I had a couple more actually for Nikki because I didn't have a chance to finish talking with Ms. Nagaya.
Oh, great. Okay. Okay.
Oh, do you want to take those first?
Yeah, why don't we do that since we do have so Sam Perry, welcome. Is Sam still here? Yes, there he is. Okay.
You had to earn this.
And
I'll be brief.
Great.
Mayor Taki, City Council, past and future mayors. With respect to you and the staff and the public service officers and the public safety officers and the citizenry and passersby. I'm just want to rise in a little bit of exasperation over the prospect of 10 years in the making of a project that for $70 million or whatever may have produced a fair amount of significant dislocation with no discernible benefit over what might or may still be able to be possible with less cost, with far less disruption perhaps, with a more clear and effective outcome. And that's it.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sam. And then I'd like to call up Daniel Hom. Good evening.
Good evening. I should have turned in my comment card 2 hours ago. Just a couple of quick comments. One was related to Caltrans. The other one is general traffic in the neighborhood. I was here last month. I thought maybe there would be a Caltrans representative here, and I'm not sure if anyone is here from Caltrans. But comment about Caltrans, the electronic sign that was present on 101 directing traffic to avoid Willow, that's gone now, so the traffic congestion on 101 exiting onto Willow has been horrible. It's taken me 30 minutes just to exit on Willow Road to go to westbound. Another time, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, right in the middle of rush hour, 3 of the 3 lanes exiting on Willow Road, 2 of them were closed strictly for restriping of arrows, which just seems to be very ridiculous to close 2 out of 3 lanes at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And now that Willow Road takes so long to exit, the option to exit on University or Willow is no longer a valid option. We just go straight up to Marsh Road and double back around. So that was the Caltrans comment. For the neighborhood streets, traffic has been improving, but it's strictly because of the holidays. So this week, there's been the notice of traffic on Gilbert being backed up. The right turns from Middlefield or Gilbert, restricted right turns onto Willow, I would encourage that to be reinvestigated because there's still a constant flow of traffic coming down Willow. And that's actually about it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Tracy Morris.
Hi there. I was one of the people who was really active in the conversations about getting all the temporary changes made, and I just wanted to thank you all
Can
for...
you raise the microphone?
Yeah.
So we
Can you hear me?
Thank you.
I just wanted to thank you all for addressing the neighborhood's concerns so quickly and all the steps you all have taken. And it seems like night and day. I know that it's because of the holidays, right? You know, we're getting past them, but it's made such a difference. And I'm so happy riding around in my neighborhood again. So thank you.
Great. Thanks for the feedback. All right. I'm only taking cards from those who did not speak earlier. Let's bring it back here. I think Councilmember Keith, I think you had the first question,
thank you.
correct?
Oh, yeah, thank you. Hi, Ms. Nagaya, thanks for coming back up. You were cut off earlier about responding to this issue, and I know you had said that a couple of things, but would you mind just finishing or summarizing on why it was that this project is being done and what the benefits are?
Yes, no, I think the general response that we gave earlier highlighted the traffic issues and some of the weaving conflicts that had been identified as the underlying purpose for the project. The only other thing I would mention is that during public review and development of the alternatives in the 2012 time period, there was a lot of community input around the desire to see improved pedestrian and bicycle connections across the interchange. And so this is, again, not a new item that you've heard this before, but the desire to see those improved pedestrian bicycle connections was strong. So the redesigned interchange will have widened sidewalks as well as both protected bike lanes with a barrier as well as striped bike lanes on the next to the vehicle lanes as well. So those were the main purposes for the interchange reconstruction, and with that, I'm happy to take other questions, but those were the
Can you just
the goals.
clarify about Caltrans' work now regarding cloverleaf versus partial cloverleaf?
So in general, Caltrans is moving away across the state from the installation of new cloverleaf interchanges. So in one of our prior presentations to the council, we had a Caltrans staff member here talking about some of the pros and cons of the different interchanges. In general, across the interchange as well, across the industry, we haven't seen many new examples of cloverleaf interchanges being constructed in space-constricted urban areas. They generally require a larger footprint, and they don't necessarily handle capacity as traffic grows in especially peak periods, as well as something like a partial cloverleaf, where you have the signals on either side of the ramps to moderate traffic coming on and off the freeway.
Okay, and how does that moderation of the traffic benefit the traffic flow?
So it gets back to then those weaving conflicts that we talked about earlier this evening, where you have in a cloverleaf, the loop ramps come on and off of the freeway. Those are very limiting to capacity in the peak hours. And so partial cloverleafs in the peaks tend to be better at managing those interactions of vehicles as vehicles are coming on and off of the freeway.
Okay. And the issues that were raised by Mr. Lauder tonight, were they raised previously with you?
Yes, so I think that both to staff as well as to Caltrans and to the council directly.
And does that information change either your mind or did it change Caltrans' mind?
No, I think, so Deputy Director Sean Nazari was the Caltrans staff member who was here, and I apologize, I don't have the date of when Caltrans came, but it was prior to construction starting last May, and we had a discussion around the same types of questions.
And what is your background?
So I am a civil engineer by education, so graduated with a degree in civil and environmental engineering, and got my civil engineering license in 2009.
Okay. And what's your title currently with the City of Menlo Park?
Assistant Public Works Director.
All right. Okay, thank you. And I just, on a different note, I want to say to Tracy, who just spoke, I live in the Willows too, and I've noticed since we put those no right turns onto Willow Road, an improvement. And I was wondering when people got back to work in general, if it was going to stay that way or how it was going to be, but I've noticed a market improvement as well, and I'm really happy to see that as well. Of course, if there are other things that we can look at in the future, I think we would be very happy to address those. Thanks.
Okay, Vice Mayor Mueller.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about this all day long. It looks like tonight the opinions aren't changed. We'll know when the intersection's done what the result will be. I mean, there's two different sides. One side thinks that when the intersection is done, you're still going to have the lights, which will be a stop valve on both sides of the intersection, affecting flow, pushing traffic further into Menlo Park like it is now. And then there's other benefits that people think will come from that, but that it will see improved flow. The proof will be in the pudding in a few years from now, but if decisions aren't changed tonight, there's no reason to keep going over it. The one thing I am interested to know is whether or not Caltrans is coming back, because I thought at a prior meeting there was a discussion where, Peter, you indicated you were interested in them coming back for some questions about issues that had been raised. And I'm not sure which meeting that was, but Nikki, do you remember that?
Yes, so I believe it was on December 5th when we had the item before you for the temporary restrictions in the Willows. There was a discussion about Caltrans coming back to the city. So we've been having conversations with them to coordinate on dates. They provided us some preliminary information last week. But we also want to make sure that that discussion's fruitful. So we anticipate working closely with them over the coming weeks to make sure if they come before you that the presentation is helpful and frames the issues that you want to hear about. So I think we have some work to do on our end to make sure that they're ready to come back before that occurs.
So yeah, I mean, it's real simple. So I do want to see them come back, so I want to ask them some more questions. But it's real. If decisions aren't made, it's going to be real simple. At the end of construction, if traffic is considerably worse, like it is now during construction, then it'll be disappointing and frustrating. And if it's way better, I'll be the first to say I was wrong. So on that issue, secondarily to that, I am interested in talking about the internal Willows traffic issue that was raised by Kathleen Daly tonight, and whether or not you guys have had a chance to go out and look at Minalto, the business district, and the interaction of the kids coming down Oak there between that 3 to 4 p.m. time change, and whether or not we should be talking about putting some stickers on those new signs in order to adjust when those right turns go into effect so that kids aren't in a dangerous situation there with drop off and pick up.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have had staff members out every day that school's been in session since the time that the signs went up on December 18th through earlier this evening. So we definitely appreciate, one of our staff members has also spoken to Ms. Daly on a number of occasions over the last week. So we haven't yet been able to take a look at the data that she's collected, but we have had folks doing just anecdotal observations to verify whether or not we're seeing any additional safety issues that have resulted in that time restriction. Generally, the behavior out there looks to be the same, but the volumes may have changed. So we'll continue to monitor and observe, particularly the school dismissal traffic, and we're happy to modify the time if we want to move it to 4 o'clock. We've already ordered the stickers in anticipation that there may be an issue. So we're happy to make that change, but we haven't seen anything really drastically different than what the typical school dismissal looked like prior to the temporary turn restrictions going in place.
Okay, I just asked you guys if you could go out and meet with Kathleen and see what she's looking at. That would be great to try to get context. When is this going to be done? Like, do we know when the interchange is supposed to be done?
Yep, so we are currently in the midst of the second construction phase. There are 4 phases, and it's estimated to be roughly about another, I'm going to forget what, I'm much better earlier in the evening. The overall timeline was 18 months, and it started in May of 2017. So we're looking at towards the end of this year, early next year for completion.
All right. So at some point, as we approach the end of this year, we should see traffic starting to either improve in terms of Willow congestion or staying the same, and we'll have a pretty good idea of whether or not it actually improved throughput.
Yeah, and I think it's been an interesting case study for us even to watch the turn restrictions that were put in place over the last month, because absolutely the holidays have completely reduced the traffic congestion that we're seeing. But just personally, on my commute into work, I am seeing traffic levels being very typical as of last week. And this week, even tonight on Willow Road, it was not as heavy as what we were seeing in November and December. So we're not drawing conclusions based on this, but there's definitely, over the last few weeks, been an observed lightening of the congestion on Willow.
So and I'm going to just respond to that, because the one thing that I have been getting phone calls still, but now it's about what we heard tonight, about people saying there's cut through taking place over to Marsh. And also people saying it takes forever to get into Menlo Park, like forever to get into Menlo Park at night. So I think we're seeing traffic sort of move around to the new conditions. But but I'm not sure. I had one gentleman who is just a dad who never talks to me about city stuff, and he called me one day furious that it took him a very similar story to what we heard about the 40 minutes, telling me that story that he's dealing with now. So I continue to, it's not even concerns anymore. I'm convinced these two lights that have now been put in place are stop valves, and they're just affecting through traffic into the city and out of it. It might at the end, it might be that it'll be easier to get to East Menlo Park and to the Dumbarton Bridge once this is done, but I still think the quality of life of folks living west of the freeway trying to get in and out of that freeway is dramatically different.
Okay, and then I was trying to remember, I think, Councilmember Carlton, I think you were next, followed by Councilmember Klein.
Okay. I wholeheartedly back working with Kathleen and dealing with those issues. I've also been getting phone calls and emails about people, and my heart really goes out to these people who have children who have exams the next morning, and there's unbelievable noise keeping them awake at 2 a.m. And I managed to go to a Caltrain meeting and find their liaison and spoke to him about it. And I will just say that his answer was not really satisfactory. It is what it is. However, I think it might help. I say it is what it is in the sense that I have no ability to do anything about it. And they basically said that's life. For now, while they're doing that aspect, and said that shortly the very noisy part will be over, and the quality of life for people living in that area will get better. And maybe it would be more tolerable for those people if either we or Caltrain could reach out to people in that neighborhood to let them know this is what's happening on this date. We expect it to not be as noisy, to at least give them a light at the end of the tunnel. Anything that we can think of to do to try and make it better for those people, because I do understand it's tough when you're being kept awake at night for any extended period of time. And I don't want to really rehash what's done, because it's been made really clear to me that we have a split council on whether or not this was a good decision or not, and it's been made very clear to me at this point that the vote's done, it started, it is what it is. However, I do worry about the quality of life for people turning west into Menlo Park, particularly from the south, because I believe they will get caught up in traffic. And I completely understand what Vice Mayor Mueller said. However, I guess I'm just a little bit more reticent to say we'll see in the end if there's still something we can do. And when Caltrain gets back, if there's something we can do with the lanes, for example, to have a dedicated lane turning left, that might make it better. I'm not willing to give up and say, God, I hope I'm wrong. I still want to fight to make this better in any way we can. So I would like to have that up for their consideration when they do come, and it would be great if they could come sooner rather than later, so that if it is possible to do anything, that we have time to do that.
Just real quick, I support that lane hogging thing, the lane hogging comments that Gary said tonight, and what we do with the lanes there. I actually think that is actually worth looking into.
It might be possible, and it might make it better.
Great. Yes, I think that's something that we have been talking with Caltrans about since the meeting where they did come before you, and this similar issue was discussed. So we had looked at some concepts. The current plan for we'll say the northbound off-ramp, or the off-ramp coming from 101 to the south, does have 2 lanes, and one traps into 2 right turn lanes as you approach the traffic signal. The other would trap into to left turn lanes. So we'd talked to them about using some flexible delineators or some other materials to better designate where people should align as you get off of the freeway, so that the phenomenon that Mr. Lauder described as hogging would be minimized as much as possible.
I believe he actually showed a photograph of exactly what
right at Hillsdale
is going to happen, and so it would need to be something that couldn't be cheated, that it would actually be a hard dedication. I don't know if that's possible.
Yeah, and that's so Caltrans is then balancing putting a barrier that presents a collision hazard in the roadway versus trying to guide people into the correct lane. And so a like concrete barrier or something that is a wall preventing people from maneuvering between the lanes, they were not supportive of, because it presents a crash hazard for vehicles as they're exiting the freeway. That's where the flexible posts were an option that we talked about with them. So it is something that you can roll over, but it would provide a stronger sense of deterrent for a driver to get in that lane at the last minute.
So just so I understand what you're saying, the flexible posts are similar to the ones that we see currently in some areas that are very tall.
So we have them on Ravenswood at Alma. So those yellow or white plastic posts, so you can roll over them, but then they bounce back up at the after they're traveled over.
Okay. Is there room to do that? I thought there was a problem when we discussed this before, that there wasn't enough room. You'd still have a single before it went into that, and the block would occur in the single lane before you got to an area. Are they willing to, are they able to provide that lane that we're discussing?
Yep, so the current design, as they sent it out for the contractors to build, has the two exit lanes coming off of 101, and they're striped as I described earlier. So that's part of the design. The piece that we will need to circle back with them on is the flexible posts.
Is it even possible to have the design the lanes separated in any way, shape, or form as you enter?
So right now, the only separation is a painted line. Anything that provides a more physical barrier presents the crash hazard risk that they described.
All right. Well, before it goes too late, we can go into the details later, but this is something that I think would be interesting to look into further.
Okay. Councilmember Klein, you're finished, right? Okay. Councilmember
Thank
Klein.
you. I won't revisit some of the comments, only say that I do agree that there is that work needed to be done on the design. I don't have a lot of data showing how Caltrans or any of the state agencies effectively modify these partial clover leaves, and which is, I think, by far like the most popular adopted configuration now around freeway systems, according to anything that I've been able to find. Again, it's very difficult to find a whole lot of data on the crash data versus others the way that the speaker was talking about. It's just it's frustratingly difficult to find a whole lot of the data. But the examples locally are ones that I think we should look at as learning. Hopefully Caltrans is looking at them from learning, and so that those lanes are addressed, because I do see that is the potential problem for us and for a certain segment, particularly that west side, trying to get across. In your experience, I guess I'm just going to ask you, have you worked with Caltrans, and have they ever been willing at post-project to make modifications and admit that they've made mistakes?
So
at their cost, I mean.
Right. No, I think I've worked with Caltrans on a number of projects prior to coming to the city. In general, I would say the one that's probably most familiar is the addition of the auxiliary lanes between Embarcadero Road and Highway 85 in Santa Clara County.
Right.
That was completed in 2011 or 2012. we did amend those design plans pretty significantly during the early kind of environmental review stages to include a second HOV lane at the request of VTA. But it was not necessarily something that at the end of the project, I think they deemed as an issue or a mistake. So I can't necessarily say I've ever had that direct experience before.
Okay. And I think what I want to acknowledge is that we do have a split vote. I can't see how anybody has the proper amount of data to go against the state agency's recommendations and what I've seen in other state agencies and the trending that I've seen behind this. I don't have that. I have a lot of respect for Gary in particular, and I think the research that he's put into this. So I'm looking at those particular points of feedback on where the lanes and the challenges for anything going west. Let's just call it westbound for our sake. And I just want to make sure that we do have the opportunity to have that conversation ongoing, and we're able to have at least some engagement with Caltrans about that, and that they're able to show us materials and show us examples and those types of things, because I do think it's important. As for the other points within Willows, I'm in full agreement. Clearly, it's improved now. Let's wait a few weeks and see. But also on those hours, if we have, we talked about this directly. If we were going to make changes in that community with those signs, and then there was going to be impacts that are adverse, significantly adverse in other areas of the Willows, we would take notice quickly and adjust. And I think we gave you authority to do that without having to come back. So I just encourage you to take that authority and do with that great degree of yours what you need to do. But thank you for the time on this.
Thank you. So I just wanted to add a few points, and then I know Councilmember Keith has a follow-up. So first of all, let's talk about Willow's cut through first. I certainly wanted to commend staff, commend your team, Nikki, for I think a very effective implementation of some measures, and also wanted to highlight the success that your team has had getting ways to treat the Willows as sort of off limits in terms of, I think that's very important, and I'm hoping that we will see that to be a long-term benefit that comes out of the process. I certainly would encourage you, and this was in the context of, I think, Councilmember Mueller at the last meeting before the holidays had suggested, and I think we all concurred about giving you the latitude to follow up, to evaluate, to consider some of the additional suggestions that have been made by folks this evening, whether it's Kathleen, whether it's Mr. Hom, because I fully know that the impact, it's still too early in some respects to look at the impact. I would recommend that that perhaps coming back sometime in February makes sense, because we're already, pretty late. We're midway in January. We have the different holidays, and so I want to make sure that you're coming back to us when you've got some, fuller data or more complete data as traffic resumes to more busy sort of season. And so I'd like to suggest that at one of the February meetings, when you feel like you've got some pretty good data, that would be the time to come back to us. So whether it's moving the no right turns from 3 to 4 or what have you, certainly rely on your expertise on that. Now let's shift over to Caltrans and the Willow 101 interchange. there's no question that there are a couple of issues that are coming up, and it would be helpful to get some input back from them. I think Councilmember Carlton had raised the issue about noise of the construction. I too am sensitive to some of that. To pile driving at 2 in the morning is really difficult for neighbors nearby. It would be very helpful to find out from them how much longer that's going to be. Is it just, and is there any way they can do the pile driving and I do I fully understand and respect that, they're trying to do a lot of this work outside of the commute hours, but to the extent they can mitigate some of that, that would be great.
Yeah, and I think I can give you hopefully some good news on the noise issues based on our latest conversations with them. So the bridge demolition is actually what's been causing the bulk of the noise occurring overnight because there's demolition work that is done over top of the active freeway lane. So they actually need to close multiple lanes of the freeway in order to safely do that demo work. So it involves jackhammering the concrete structure, removing the steel beams, and it is loud. So we absolutely recognize that that's a major impact. And the sound walls are down. So in this phase, they're undergoing reconstruction of sound walls, and so that would normally help mitigate some of that noise impact. And since they are being relocated as part of this phase, the sound then travels even further and is more impactful. As of last Friday, the noisiest work should be completed. They have work planned tonight and tomorrow night that was delayed last week due to the rain to remove some steel beams, but that should be much less noisy starting this week and carrying forward. There will be one more phase of bridge demo as part of the next phase of construction, which would be a few months from now. The sound wall should be back in place by then, and then we are exploring some alternative programs with them to help better get the word out, as Councilmember Carlton mentioned, and look for other options for residents for ways that we can help manage the noise better for the next phase. But for the time being, the bulk of the noise issues, the noisiest work should be completed.
Okay, great. The concern raised about the off-ramp and getting off of 101 coming southbound in the evening onto Willows westbound. That's certainly something new that I hadn't been aware of, and certainly would like to. And I don't know whether that was a striping issue, but it was my understanding that ultimately there was going to be a direct off ramp onto Willow. That it wasn't going to go through a light in the longer term. That there was going to be that as you're coming south on 101 at night, it would go onto Willow, and so it would be helpful to just know this clarification. Is this just for the interim period where we have also that right turn going into the lights? Because yes, I can see the stop valve creating a problem there, and what my memory of that was that there was going to be at least a one right turn lane that would go onto Willow in the long term.
Yes, so the ultimate configuration at the interchange, so coming south on 101, exiting to head west on Willow, there would be dedicated right turn lanes, but they will go through a traffic signal. And so the purpose of that change was really at the we'll say the existing interchange, but the existing interchange 6 months ago, when we had the long kind of sweeping directional or diagonal ramps, there were multiple concerns raised around pedestrian safety, and so you had what was called an uncontrolled crosswalk of that ramp. with not a lot of indication of a potential pedestrian crossing. So you would come off of the freeway, you'd be moving through the landscaped area. There were a lot of trees in that area, and you'd be turning at the same time as you had a pedestrian crosswalk striped at the ramp. So pulling those right turns into the traffic signal helps manage some of those conflicts for pedestrians and improve safety at the intersection itself for folks using those crosswalks. That said, the current configuration is not the ultimate configuration, so there's several steps that need to be taken, and the current signals are providing left turns from Willow onto the freeway, and so the signal timing and everything is not the final configuration. So that will change, and there should be more time allotted in the future for that southbound right turn coming off of the freeway. So we'll see changes there.
Okay, great. And then finally, northbound, evening, off-ramp. Certainly one of the aspects is most of that traffic, and I think Mr. Lauder's screenshots from Google Maps certainly shows that the vast proportion of that traffic is heading toward the Dumbarton Bridge. But there's not only one, the drivers that want to go westbound into Menlo Park or in the westbound direction, but there's also in my observation, a sizable group of drivers that want to get to the left turn lane of Newbridge to get into Bellhaven. And I'd like to make sure that we're thinking about, what is, how do we address this, lane hogging issue of all of that traffic going to Dumbarton, and whether that means that left lane be not only for a left turn into toward the western part of Menlo Park, or as well as allowing folks who want to, instead of, the previous design, you came off of 101, and if you want to go to Newbridge, you had to make this, quick go over two lanes, and you had to make sure there wasn't any traffic, coming, and it kind of created some diciness and probably didn't help with the flow previously. Now, actually, there's this opportunity to actually direct those drivers to go to the light, and then when the light's green for left turn, they could actually take a right and go over to Newbridge. So, and it would probably be safer, and it would take some of the folks from the right lane into that left lane. So I'd like to recommend that, take that under consideration and talk to Caltrans. And I definitely do concur with both council members Mueller and Carlton that a stronger separation between the two lanes would be very desirable. And I do think that's something that can be implemented while we're still in the project without changing the whole configuration, and I think we'll make the project better. And so, and I do appreciate the suggestions made by Mr. Lauder about recommending a stronger separation of some kind. I do think that the flexible barriers will help if there's any way to be able to somewhat to create a little more of a barrier. It may be just a foot division or something that might, it's not a crash hazard, but helps to separate that flow. I'm all for that, as well as including some of that Newbridge traffic in that direction to, again, sort of reduce the temptation to hog both lanes if you're going toward the Dumbarton. I do think we've got time to work with them, and I'm happy to certainly encourage you and to, really press Caltrans on that. I also wanted to add that, just before I forget, I did sign the letter today to the Mayor of Palo Alto. That was originally a letter, Councilmember Keith, that you kindly drafted to former Mayor Scharf. But given that it's now Mayor Niss in Palo Alto, I did sign it today, so I just want to let you know about asking Palo Alto to consider no left turn from Palo Alto Avenue onto Chaucer Street and to the Pope Chaucer Bridge, and so that letter will be going out. But again, that's certainly my comments. Councilmember Keith, you had a follow-up?
Yes, I'm glad you got that letter out, first of all. That's excellent. Just a little bit of follow-up. I agreed that I'd love to look at the issue of right near Gilbert and Minalto about the issue that Ms. Daly brought up. She brought that up with me over the holidays, too, about the kids on bikes leaving from Laurel Upper Campus. And I'm wondering, I know we talked about, perhaps changing the time for the right turn on Gilbert. And I also want to explore if there's a way to look at any kind of bicycle route that we could encourage that would not take them on Gilbert. So I just want to put that out there as something to help out with the traffic that might be on Gilbert and might not be on another street that's not a major thoroughfare. And I'm specifically speaking of going towards Coleman Avenue, because there's no way for cars to go through that area because there's a school right there. But that would also require working with the school to see if we could get any kind of biking through that area to go by the Willow Oaks Park.
Right, and that was originally the purpose of the Laurel Upper School Safe Routes to School plan that is in the council's 2017 work plan. So I know it's at the forefront of all of your radars as you go into the goal setting process in the next few weeks. But that's a project that has been delayed based on other projects and the 2 vacancies we have in the transportation team right now. And so keeping that study moving would be the place where we'd recommend looking at the designation of the bike routes, is making a one-off change to install the bike route without a thorough evaluation of all of the streets in the neighborhood, I think is going to be a challenge to sell. We had originally talked about installation of some improvements on Gilbert, and then that was the impetus for the Safe Routes plan to be prioritized last year as well.
Yes. Yep. Okay. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. Yep. And then the other thing, one of the speakers tonight talked about bringing back a sign that asking people to avoid Willow Road. And can we ask Caltrans to bring that back?
Yes, we have a standing weekly construction meeting with them tomorrow morning, so that will be on our list tomorrow. I made a note as the speaker was talking earlier to find out where that went, so we'll track that down.
And then on the night work, I got many calls too, because I live in the Willows, and many people called me and emailed me at 1 a.m., very frustrated. And when I contacted Caltrans to ask about the night work, I was told that on, I guess January 10th would have been the last night of the demolition work, because they had to demolish both sidewalks on both sides of the overpass, so it was a really noisy night. And I did ask, can you please let us know when you're going to have continued night work? Because I think we need to know to put it on the website to get the information out to people. But the people who contacted me, I got back to them with this information. But I understand it was loud, and I'm sorry. When that demolition work happens, it is loud, and they didn't want to do it early. They couldn't do it during the daytime when cars were flowing. But it's really disruptive to everybody, and nobody can get up and feel comfortable going to work the next day or going to school because they didn't get a good night's sleep. Hopefully that is going to be over, is what I've been informed. The other thing I want to bring up with you that I didn't bring up earlier is landscaping. And knowing that this is an 18-month project and we're probably going to be done around December, I would like us to dive into what the landscaping plan is, because I had contacted Caltrans about the landscaping as well, and I'm hearing different things, that they have a plan, but that if we don't want to use their plan and the city has a different plan, Can you tell me anything about that?
So we've definitely had conversations with them about the desire to see landscaping immediately follow the construction work at the interchange. That what you're describing is the first time that I'm hearing that they have a plan that we might not want to follow. So we'll check in with them and see if they've given you any other information. We're happy to look through and get back to them. As well.
I would appreciate that because I think people and myself included were obviously very upset about losing all the trees that we had there, and so the landscaping plan is going to be very important to this overall scheme of how it looks when it's done. So I don't want to wait until December. I don't know if it's possible to bring it to us in a few months so we can see what the landscaping plan idea is. But I would ask you to do that if you can.
Yep, so we can definitely keep that on the radar in terms of a report back. I think at this point, all of our work over the coming year is very contingent on your setting of goals and priorities in the next few weeks. And so I say we can bring something back, but we need to be cognizant of the resources that we're working with and making sure that we can meet the priorities that you set for us. So I'm not trying to belabor the point tonight, but we do have some very significant staffing constraints, and I know there are a lot of issues you're going to want to tackle in the next year.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to put that in the forefront. Thank you.
Do you have one more follow-up? Let's try and wrap this up. So.
Thank you. Thank you for all the work you guys are doing in the Willows. I really appreciate it.
All right. Well said follow-up. All right. Thank you. Are there any, thank you, Nikki. Are there, on the other information items, are there any questions that we have for staff on those items? Okay. Let's move to City Manager's report. We do have a report this evening.
Yeah, just a couple of quick things for the council to be aware of. We've been apprised by the Menlo City School District that that they are going to cooperate with the Sequoia High School District by allowing nighttime activities on the Hillview Field for the month of February. Nighttime meaning post-sunset, so from 5:30 to 7:30. Because the lacrosse field at MA has not quite yet been finished, and so the lacrosse season starts on or about February 1st. So it's just more of a heads up to you all, this is happening. It's not completely in our jurisdiction, it's just between two school districts. They normally have nighttime activities there, scheduled activities later during the summer when they don't need the lights on, but the lights will be on from about 5:30 to 7:30, just to let you all know that. Okay. That's the first item. The second item is We've been late last December, Samtrans held a meeting, and I don't have a lot of details about this, but I'm giving you all a heads up that Samtrans is going to go into an exclusive negotiation process with Facebook for the programming of the Dumbarton Rail Corridor, and that's what I know. I'm waiting for Mr. Hartnett to call me back to learn more about this. Facebook gave me a heads up that had happened, that had occurred at a meeting. It was a report out from Jim Hartnett, the executive director of Samtrans, in a sort of commentary like I'm doing right now, but it was something he was doing with the board, and this caught us somewhat by surprise. We may or may not have anything to do with it because it's not our jurisdiction specifically, but it is in our town. I will make it clear that we have an interest in this as it progresses. Honestly, that's what I know, and I'm just trying to give you guys a heads up of that's what I know, and I will get more information and give it back to you.
What does that mean?
I think it means they're going to build out the train system.
They're going to build out the train system?
And operate it. Or somehow
some portion.
Be the funding source for the construction and operation of the rail solution. And I don't want to be overly, again, I'm telling you what was spoken at a meeting, and that there was not a lot of details. There will be a public meeting on this in a Samtrans board meeting in February. Oh. We will get you all the information I can get so that you guys are in the know.
So does that mean that Facebook then would have control of that corridor as it exists right now?
It's not clear. Again, you're asking good questions that we would want to know more about. So the last thing, for me, the most important thing, it's come up several times tonight, January 29th, 1 p.m., or excuse me, 12 noon is the council goal setting. I want to remind the council, it should be on your calendars, remind the public and invite them to the meeting. It will be over at the Recreation Center, so just making that abundantly clear, noon on the 29th. It's a Monday. All righty, everybody, thank you.
Great. Council member reports. Now, I do have one report, but Councilmember Mueller.
Yeah, on our council work plan last year, we had the snack shack that's been approved by the design that Sam put together was approved by the Park and Rec Commission. It was endorsed by the Historical Society. It's all set to come back to you guys to look at to see if you guys like the design. And we talked with Alex, and there's all sorts of little details, but basically, project's been looked at by the Park and Rec Commission. It was approved unanimously, and it's now ready for you guys to take a look at.
Okay. The one report I have is next Tuesday, January 23rd. We have the appeal of the Stanford Center for Academic Medicine project on Quarry Road in front of the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors in the morning. Both Nikki and myself will be going down and presenting to the SUPs on that, and we will be explaining our concerns about the process, the impacts on Menlo Park, and also potential mitigation. While we're not necessarily expecting a big change in the project, what we're certainly hoping to do is to help inform and enlighten the county supervisors on some of the issues with our being on the northbound border of Stanford University and some of the limitations with the trip cap formula that they have. So we will certainly do our best. But I encourage you, if any of you run into any Santa Clara supervisors, that you certainly let them know that you are also aware and concerned about the ongoing impacts, and want to make sure our voice is clearly heard during the 2018 GUP process. So wish us luck. Anyway, all right. With that, I think we're ready to adjourn until next week's meeting. So thank you, everyone. Buenas noches. Buenas.